And hello everybody! I am Commander Yannick, and this is Shinarata Desra. Yes, this is the well-known home to Pilots Federation, Founders World, and Jameson Memorial. Usually the hub of about like at least half the commanders that I know, the forward base, home system, depending on how you look at it. But today, I'm not particularly going to hang around at Jameson Memorial as often as in many streams that you see, and in my own. I'm going there just to switch ships and then fly back out again. Today, we're going to do the mysterious act of mining asteroids. It's not particularly mysterious, actually, but I thought it might be a bit of an interesting change compared to what we've been doing recently. Most of the planetary, mysteries and whatnot. Change of pace is always good as well, plus all the alpha stuff that's been happening recently. Sort of go back to Horizons for a comparison. Plus it's so much better optimized as well. Oh my. How's everyone doing out there? What are you all up to? Whatever you're doing, I do hope you're having a good one, though. It's a beautiful day in space, because it always is. Yeah, I'm flying through the space and here, and I'm just looking at, obviously, just back in Horizons, it does seem so much brighter. Or the objects seem so much brighter. That's the thing. I mean, in VR, different world, I suppose, but yeah, just sort of playing the sort of alternating between Horizons and Odyssey Alpha. I think that's bound to happen. Right, the ship I'll be switching to today for the general merriment is the Imperial Cutter, the Behemoth from Achenar, the Beast from the Deep Space. So I don't know what I was going to say there for a second. I'm far too tired for the word to come together easily. But yeah, it is a big ship and it's wonderful for mining particularly. Very difficult to turn and stop though. That's one of the problems with it. Nice for boosting in a straight line, but try and get any movability out of that thing. It is not good. Not good at all. But that's not really what anyone has it for anyway. Like a big versatile ship. It's the nearest thing to having a Rolls Royce, isn't it, really? In a game with some kind of custom Rolls Royce. Or a similar kind of massive car. You know, the way that rappers tend to have their cars customized? A bit like that, really. I'm not knocking it. It's not my favourite ship necessarily, but it's a good ship. I can see what a lot of people love it. You say the station serves at my disposal? Really? I don't see anyone around. Yeah, it is kind of also interesting that you go from sort of like Odyssey and be able to walk around and then thinking, oh, I can't actually do that at the moment. But so you get sort of used to having that access, and you don't. But yeah, I think there's probably going to be another sort of major update tomorrow, isn't there? I know there's the usual weekly shutdown for like power play updates and what have you. But yeah, I think they're probably going to actually put an alpha update at some point tomorrow. And if Phase 4 is going to begin then. Seems quite likely, doesn't it? I just passed it by. The courier, sorry, not the cutter. Why have I got fines on these? I don't have any fines on these. Ah, how silly. If they are, it's like about 5 credits or something. It's like, seriously, you know. suppose the attitude of rich people to parking tickets, it's just like, it's £200 or something for an ordinary person. That's quite a lot of money. If you've got millions, it's not a lot of money all of a sudden. Yeah, certainly true. To limpet myself up and fly out to a lovely place where I can do some cool mining. I mean, I don't mind mining in short bursts, which is what I'm going to attempt to do. Restock on those limpets? I think so. There's so many different configurations you can use for mining as well. I'm gone for a relatively low size of cargo hold and bigger limpet controllers just to get things done quickly. It's very, again, like many things, it leads down to personal preference, and this happens to be mine. You never want it quite 100% full with limpets. There has to be some room because your cargo will start filling up with refined materials, and there has to be space for that. So you always leave a little bit of space and not have it completely full with limpets. But that's the way. I'm going to make sure my loadout is correct. Because it would be rather embarrassing if I was to start doing this and I'd actually fitted my ship out for something completely different, which I sometimes do. They say it is a good all-rounder. Yeah, weapon-wise, it seems to be outfitted nicely for mining. Internals, all good, I think. Yeah, big limpet controller. Prismatic shield generator, diddly-dee. Yep. All those good controller limpets. Some people think it might be overkill, but I just want to get as much of it into the hole as quickly as possible. This just looks like just a giant banana, really, doesn't it? I mean, it literally does. I mean, I joke some of the other ships, but this one is kind of a little bit banana shaped. You could say. What alternatives do I have realistically, though? I've got the free Azure that Frontier gave away a little while ago, a few months ago. Or I have the rather cool black midnight colour, which is good. I like it. What realistic alternative do I have, though? Gold. It's a bit too ostentatious. Don't mind a little bit of that, but it's taking a bit far. Some of these are pretty cool, though. Try something that's a bit unusual. That isn't like one of the ones I've got at the moment. Huh. Copper, ginger blue. I'm trying the military colour. Predator colours are usually pretty awesome. Or allowed, depending on how you look at it. Pulse. Yeah. I'm not going to buy the Raider pack, at least not yet. I'm not sure really suits a cutter, to be honest, having a Raider pack. Like a pirate version of the ship, I know, but I think just it kind of looks cool apart from looking like a big space banana. Vibrant colours I rather like, I must admit. Yeah, I might get one of these. It's only 600 arcs for that. Okay, is it 2 shades of purple, or is it the same thing? Duplicated. It's like it's the same thing. I'll probably get that. That looks nice. And bingo. Right, now, the following question is, which mining locale shall I travel to? Got a few ideas in mind. I have to check the latest information. There's a few different places you can do this. Funnily enough, and as always with Elite, it's usually not with an in-game tool. It'd be great if you could do everything in-game and give you like the most up-to-date, accurate information. Yeah, most of the time you've usually got to go somewhere else, whether it be for trading or for mining, to find the best things to trade, where, how much, etc., and what the hotspot locales are, the most active present hotspots, and the relative value of different mining sort of stuff, I suppose. Really, mining materials, right word? Is there a technical word for stuff that's been mined and processed? Raw material, possibly. Depends how raw they mean. Okay. At the moment, I'm quickly checking out ED Tools and the mining tool on that. edtools.cc if you want to go to that one. Now, for a laser miner, which is the ship is configured for, now I could go for platinum, osmium, painite, low temperature diamonds, that kind of thing. In terms of the amount I can sell them for, well, what's doing well at the moment? This is a good question. Price per ton at present. The highest one is 292,000. But there's only medium platforms. 290,000 for the largest large pad, which unsurprisingly the cutter is a large pad ship. I think osmium's come up a bit recently as well, relative to what it was historically. It's not quite as valuable as some of the others, but I say it's like the relative gap. The thing is, there aren't that many hotspots, if any at all, for osmium, but yeah. For painite, which is a more they sort of one of the traditional laser mining materials, the price on this hasn't recovered as much as I would have hoped. That's actually doing the same kind of work as osmium at the moment, about 270,000 per ton. Low temperature diamonds, yeah. More, better, definitely. Where would be the best locale for this? I have in the past done this, so yeah, I've got over 200 light years to go from the bubble for that one. Having said that, there's a HIP 4351. That might be the best opportunity, I think. You're only 190 light years from Sol. That sounds good to me. Yeah. Also with make sure I've got the discovery scanner as well. No point in going all the way out to somewhere, so you haven't actually got the means of finding the hotspots. Not the discovery, so detailed scanner. Sorry, detailed scanner. Discovery scanner is built in, but the detailed scanner is not. Yeah, apologies. I have not slept well, so I'm not really on my A game right now, but I am trying my best. Cool. Okay. Let's go to the galaxy map. It's not that long a flight, but the range of the ship isn't particularly great, but it will be about maybe 10 jumps, I think, something of that order. Okay, so this isn't a marked hotspot of past, so I may have actually run out of bookmarks. Well, I have actually run out of bookmarks. Interesting. There's bound to be some fleet carriers in the system where I can park a ship up anyway. I can sort of delete some of these things that I don't really need anymore, like Alnath, for example. Oh, that's near them. Any near bubble ones aren't really so important. Only the distant system ones that I'm sort of interested in. Yeah, like Aurora, I don't really need that anymore. It doesn't matter anyway. Okay, let's go to HIP 43, etc. Cool. Best to put on star classes for that one. For navigational purposes. Keep scoopable stars in line of sight. Hopefully. Right, how many jumps? Ooh, 24. It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually that. The range of this ship is not great, as they say, but it's supposed to be a mining ship for crying out loud, so it's never going to be amazing. Where's the range of this one? Oh, Phil. Oh, it's 18 light years. I shouldn't really be so surprised. It's actually less than I thought. It was about 21 light years, but no. Fully, is certainly not. Oh well. Certainly got the time for it. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the boost speed of this is actually always good. I can, like, 444. That's pretty nice. It's a big ship as well. I mean, it's not that amazing for other ships, but for such a huge, bear moth as this one, it's kind of remarkable. But they say that because of the relatively weak thrusters on the maneuvering thrusters, you're not going to be able to turn or slow down very quickly, so it comes at a price, that kind of boost speed. It's okay to get away from people and things, though. Get away from high G worlds, boosting away if you get it wrong. Which doesn't always work, funnily enough, depending on how high G the world and how quickly you're falling. And also if anyone who would want to destroy your ship. This isn't like a fully hull-tanked version of a cutter, though. If you've got a hull-tanked cutter, it's quite hard to destroy, or it would take a while anyway. I know it's probably like a full-on, like, elite PvP player is probably going to be able to dismantle one. Yeah, given, not that long. But yeah, generally speaking, they're not the easiest ships to destroy. Probably the hardest actual ship overall, I would have thought, of the ones you can actually fly in Elite. Yep, small old-fashioned cruising between different worlds. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a fleet carrier when I get there. I mean, I could have done the smart thing and actually taken out an exploration ship and then transferred this out there, but then again, I'm streaming, so I'm not actually playing by myself for myself. You guys don't want to watch a transfer in progress. That's the thing. You could always go off and do other things rather than transfer in progress for anything else. Plus, another thing with these cutters, they're not cheap to transfer around. For like even 190 light years, that's still like quite a few million there, and quite a few million I'd rather spend on other things. I think like a cutter from Colonia is like the best part of $1 billion. I mean, it's a seriously large amount of money. And pre-fleet carriers, if you wanted to get like a cutter or a corvette to Colonia, you really had to fly it yourself. You could transfer it in theory, but it just wasn't worth it unless you had like several billion already. And even then, it's like if you had 3 billion, and it cost you about $1 billion to transfer it. It's got to sting, even if you've got that much money. So most people, guess what? They flew them out there. I think the cutter is a bit better for the jump range, obviously, than the Corvette. So it's easier to strip that down and fly it out. That's the way often with you see, it was cheaper to actually disassemble a ship into its modules, sell the hull, and transfer a ship out with the engineered modules to Colonia, but that's again pre sort of fleet carrier era. And then buy the ship again there, buy the hull there, and reassemble the ship, as it were. But the thing is, you can't really buy corvettes and cutters out in Colonia. At least last time I looked, you couldn't. I had to double check, but I'm pretty sure you still can't. due to the various sort of faction states out there and allegiances of different factions. But yeah, now with fleet carriers, it's much easier. Just any ship you can. When you can find a fleet carrier that's going to Colonia, you just get on board and you go. I mean, it's definitely exploring the lazy way. That's the thing. Is like if you're going to fly between the bubble and Colonia, if you took a very direct route, I mean, you're less likely to get good scan money for that. But if you're going slightly out of your way, either up or down, or even just side to side in the galaxy from the straight line, sort of shipping routes, as it were, you can sometimes happen upon some interesting things. I mean, this is a good example in my own case. I think I was returning from Mercury 7 expedition. Colonia was our forward base. We'd flown out and then flown back to it as a circle in the expedition. And I was returning in my ship to the bubble. And I was thinking, I don't want to just fly direct. I want to sort of, have a bit of a detour and take the sort of slightly longer route back to the bubble. And in the middle of doing this, I actually made some cool discoveries. I discovered a POI that EDSM still has to this day. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's after that Welsh mythological one. But it ended up being a one of the waypoints, actually, in Distant Worlds 2. So I was quite happy with that. That's about right. Is the discoverer name of the POI? I can't remember what it's actually called, but I think it's something connected with the Legend of Taliesin, actually. I think it's the lake in that. I don't know what that's actually called. That's the Welsh name for it. That's it, Lake Tegid, the Lake Tegid Nebula. And I think I called it the Lyn Tegid Nebula because Lyn Tegid is the Welsh name for Lake Tegid. Yeah. It's always good to have mythological sort of figures and stories to name things after in space. Obviously, the Greek and Roman stories, there's plenty of those. There's a few, obviously, in Indian mythology as well, sort of Hindu mythology. And I thought putting some Welsh mythology in there would be quite interesting too, because they happen to look like underwater to some degree. There's some nebula that look like that, mostly sort of planetary nebula. That sort of greeny, sometimes greeny sort of blue color as well. That looks like you're in a sea or a lake. Accidentally triggering things. But yeah, at the time it was a happy discovery, because I wasn't really intending to really go exploring. It just happened upon it, a planetary nebula, and it was very pretty. And it became an EDSM POI and became quite well known off all the back of Distant Worlds. So it was time well spent. I think most things in that shipping lane around it now are quite well discovered. At least all the major stuff. There's probably some planetary nebula that still aren't discovered out there in the galaxy at large. I mean, away from the main sort of the main triangle, or depending on look at it, quadrangle of shipping routes between obviously the bubble, Colonia, Sagittarius, East Star, and Beagle Point. Those are sort of the main routes where most things are kind of discovered, or just off those are most of the main sort of nebulae and planetary nebulae and some obvious sort of big stars and things have been discovered. And I say if you go a certain distance off them, off the beaten track, as it were, you still can discover good stuff. But yeah, all the big things have probably already been discovered in those places. I mean, there's a massive amount of stars at the core of the galaxy that remain largely unmapped, just because there's so many of them. I've seen various maps of the galaxy that are just that the percentage of stars that are discovered are highest around the edges because there just aren't that many stars. And various like circumnavigation expeditions and individuals have actually managed to find them all, or most of them anyway. And therefore the percentage of discovery is much higher compared to the centre of the galaxy, where the opposite is true. There's a very small percentage of stars that are discovered just because there's so many of them. Yeah, at the moment I'm just sort of buckyballing really through space. Not really trying to scan anything particularly, because I'm basically near bubble space. There's not really much I can scan anyway that isn't already well catalogued, well discovered. And 15 jumps left, cool. That's nice. Yeah, it's if anyone is still interested in sort of going out there to find cool stuff, this galaxy, there's probably loads of great stuff out there that hasn't been found. Just talking about stars and planetary features and planetary nebula, because planetary nebula are quite small, and you won't really necessarily know that they're there until you're almost upon them. So there is an element of being sort of eagle-eyed, and another one, a certain amount of good luck as well, being in the right place at the right time. But yeah, there's definitely stuff out there that can still be discovered. I wouldn't let that put off anyone, because we've discovered less than 0.1% of the stars in the galaxy. We were talking sometimes, like half seriously, half jokingly, about we could go to the Magellanic Cluster source for Andromeda. It's like we've not really discovered what's here already, Yeah, I'm not knocking the idea of going to distant clusters, different stars, etc. So distant galaxies in the universe, but we still got a lot of stuff here to find. If anyone that does have any interesting planetary sort of features, interesting stars, interesting systems, really, planetary neighbours, anything like that, good idea to report it to the Galactic Mapping Project and the EDSM people. And you do that by going to the Frontier Forums and the Exploration Forum. And there's a sort of subsection on that dedicated to the Galactic Mapping Project. And then that's where you're going to submit your discoveries. Obviously, there's certain kind of criteria as well, and a certain format to report them. But I would recommend anyone do so, because it's always worth your while. I mean, they may accept it, they may not, depending obviously how common what you're actually submitting is, or how interesting it really is. Because some things people submit at like 10 a penny, and there's lots of them out there. Some things are genuinely rare. It's totally dependent, but it's always worth submitting it just in case. You never know. It may be accepted. Like my own discoveries, I've had some rejected, some accepted, slightly more accepted than rejected, but it's always worth trying, It's a great feeling, definitely, to see it out there in the community's mapping projects. To refuel a little bit more than I have previously. Yeah, it's pretty hot scoop at this one. Really? I'm heating up? You don't say. Put some sausages on. Put on the barbecue. Or you take your fancy vegan barbecue. Not my thing personally, but it may be yours. So it's like the thing about fermiols, putting stuff to be cooked over those, and the old-fashioned campfire. A bit warmer than a campfire probably, but that's the way it goes. So what are you guys up to today? Hope there's something cool or fun, or at least amusing. Even if you can't find anything that's actually like really sort of, original, interesting, amazing, bizarre, just something that's funny, you know. You got to laugh really at life, I think. Makes it so much easier if you do. Yeah, it gets a bit boring having all the heat warnings all the time. It's one of the few warnings I actually leave on. As you probably notice, I don't leave most of the usual ship sort of warnings about lots of things, or even like information, you know, like things being scanned, jumped out, jump sort of count and what have you. It gets a bit dull after a while hearing the same sort of, you know, 5 second countdown. Just like leave the computer warning me of I think overheating in, you know, attack and a few other things that kind of critical and like would threaten the ship directly. Other than that, I can see what's going on and I'm pretty aware of what's going on. So yeah, my attention's elsewhere. The only thing I really want to know is things that are possibly deadly to the ship. So I'm not too worried otherwise. Again, it's down to your own personal preference what you want to do in this regard. It's just my personal preference to have the ship as fairly quiet. So also I can listen out to what's going on with, you know, the engines, with the sort of scooping of the gases into the intakes, all the sort of sounds of the ship, you know, the FSD sort of charging up, all the different things that you can hear out there. If it was sort of unfettered like that. Also, when I'm with other players, it's like I want to hear what they're saying. I don't want to hear what the computer's saying. It's like, that's not interesting. But yeah, if you're new to sort of multiplayer Elite, it's always a great idea if you can find someone to wing up with, find a friend to fly with, find a group and maybe fly with them. As I say, most explorers don't necessarily fly with each other all the time, but that's what expeditions are for, or meetups. I was thinking the other day actually, before the Apollo 15 expedition leaves in July, there's usually like traditionally one sort of meetup before that, but I might do more. Hello Commander Vantablack. At the moment I'm in sort of kind of near the bubble or the edge of the bubble. I'm not that far from it. I'm just trying to do some mining. Yeah, I think I'm about 100 getting towards 190 light years from Sol, so I'm not really that far out at the moment. This is not really an exploration day. I'm just sort of talking about it more than anything else. But I will be doing more sort of full-on exploration in future streams. But yeah, it's as we're saying, the meetups particularly. I think there's definitely more sort of demand for those into the near future. I think even just sort of explorers casually meeting up in sort of the near bubble area is quite a good one, because there's some expeditions at the moment that are going on, but obviously most people are already off on those if they are. That's cool, Bones Black, about platinum overlaps. Yeah, I think the platinum market has definitely improved. That and osmium do seem to sell for a lot more in the last few months than they ever have done, which is good. Because beforehand everyone would just like ignore platinum and ignore osmium and just like, you know, not even bother with it. But now, as you say, with like overlaps and the prices being more stable, yeah, 100%. I mean, I've done a little bit of platinum mining in the last couple of months, just to sort of see how it will work, and it's done all right actually. I find it easier to find that than osmium. The weird thing is, there's always the way, isn't it? When you're looking for something, you don't usually find it. Like, when you're not wanting osmium or platinum, you usually find loads of it. That's that's the way of a thing sometimes. At the moment, I might actually program the limpet so they actually take osmium and platinum up too. But yeah. That's not a bad idea, particularly if you're only going to doing laser mining. I think right now it's the kind of traditional, painite, low temperature diamonds. They're not paying badly, but they're definitely not paying what they once were. At one point, obviously, like low temperature diamonds were definitely like the thing to have for laser mining, and sort of painite went up and down, but it was still pretty good. But a lot of that's sort of gone by the wayside now. It's still not bad though. If you find a good spot, it's definitely worth a look. But that's what I'm saying. It's a good idea to always have one of the mining tools, or also Elite Dangerous Database is quite a good one for seeing what's what in terms of prices and where. Like, just out of curiosity about what you were saying about platinum as well. Yeah, I was looking this up earlier, wasn't I? The price is not bad. It's like, what, 292,000 per ton? It's like, yeah, that's actually pretty nice. I'm not really like an expert miner, but I know enough to sort of, to get by and do what I need to do. I'm sure there's people out there who are more expert than me who will probably say, no, you're doing it wrong, or what have you, but yeah, I do what I need to do. Just checking out the prices just briefly for a second, just to if there's been any sort of changes in it. Yeah, osmium 273, painite again. Yeah, painite's lower actually. Yeah, 259,000 per ton, and our diamonds are forever. Now, the low temperature diamonds are actually going back up again after a while. I think that's like, 360 per ton. Or, 346,000 per ton. For larger sort of pads and what have you, air stations, larger pads. So that would be something good to look at. Thousand tons of painite and a carrier. This is the thing about carriers, though. You can actually, hoard material there, and that's the good thing about it. Because if you've got that painite, you don't have to sell it now. You can wait till the price goes up again, or you can sell half of it and whatever. It gives you that flexibility, So in some ways, like, you've got to be quite a successful miner already to afford a carrier, but then it can make you a super successful miner if you've got a carrier. So yeah, they are like the miner's best friend, really, aren't they? A fleet carrier. Or if you have access to a fleet carrier, if you have a friend who's got a fleet carrier and they're sort of willing to, like, fly into a mining system, that's always a good idea, actually. Or if you're a part of a group that's got a fleet carrier. Yeah. Fleet carrier I own is like with a DSSA, so I can't really move it, and it's the other side of the galaxy anyway, so it's not really much use to me for mining. I've got to laugh, really. I think the days, obviously, of in Elite of having almost ridiculously easy money for mining have gone now. I mean, you can. It's the probably still the best way to get a lot of money, but it's not quite as, like, as easy as it once was. Like getting 900,000 credits per ton, like, easily for all kinds of things. That's just not happening anymore. Frontier deliberately sort of came down hard on that. After a very long time, that not being the case, though. But that's always the way in the game. Is a lot of the different gold rushes have been so that they happen for short periods of time. Then then Frontier cramps down on them, don't they? The mining one lasted for longer than almost any other gold rush, though. That lasted for many months. Other ones, like, various passenger routes, have tended to end within a few weeks, sometimes even a few days. Which I find that a bit sad, really. I mean, let people have their gold rush. Let them make, a lot of money for a month or something, and then if you really must shut it down, then fair enough. But, it always seems to be a bit mean-spirited. Like, you need credits in the game. I understand you don't want to make it unrealistic that you people can get credits, super easily. But at the same time, there's a balance to be struck, definitely. No, absolutely. You can do 100 million an hour for passenger missions from Sothis to Sirius Atmospherics. I was doing one on the stream the other week, so just to sort of make the point, really, that it was still open and it's still a viable thing. Now, to be fair, that's what I often do because, I say, like, I don't mind mining, but I don't really do it for long periods of time, more than like a few hours, and then I usually get bored of it and do something else. And that's one of my preferred ways of getting money in Elite is by passenger missions, as you say, from out there in the sort of, Robigo, Sothis kind of area. I tend to call it the Robigo cluster. No one else really seems to call it that, but I just think, well, there's like a few heritage systems out there. Why not just call it the Robigo cluster? Sounds kind of cool. But that's the thing with all these sorts of money makers. There's quite a lot of repetition involved, and I think the least problematic one to me is definitely the Sirius Atmospherics one. I think because I'm flying around, I find I'm a bit happier with that. I think with mining, it's just you kind of move around a bit, you shoot an asteroid, you move around a bit more. Yeah, I know the other form of mining, the core mining, is there is a certain skill to that. That is true. I mean, I've done that a few times, but it's quite fiddly, and it takes a long time to often find a good rock for that one. I mean, if you get the technique down and you get a good sort of you get a good ring and you get lots of good rocks in it, then you can make a lot of money per hour. But there's so many permutations involved. I mean, it's pretty spectacular when it blows up. I mean, that's my favourite part. Actually, I thought the visuals for that was one of the coolest things that Frontier's done for a while. Because obviously, you get the explosion, and then if you're too close to it, your ship gets hit by the explosion. So it's nice. It's cool. So are you mining at the moment then, Vanta Black? Or are you doing something else right now? Oh no, you definitely crash into to things approaching Holz's Reach. It's not supposed to be an easier approach. I think they deliberately make it hard. Ah, that's cool. Maxing out all the mats. Yeah, all the materials, yeah. For those of you who aren't familiar with what he's saying, it's talking about maximising all the engineering materials. Because they are useful for other things as well, like, in-ship synthesis as well. When you're in the field, you can synthesize limpets, and obviously you can repair SRVs, and so on and so forth. There's many things you can do. You can synthesize ammo as well. It has many, many uses. Check out the system map. See what goodness awaits. Yeah, as I predicted, there's a mining place. There's a whole load of fleet carriers. You can almost try and, like, even if you don't know what the body is going to be where the mining is happening, you can guess it by looking where the fleet carriers are. It's going to be here, isn't it? I'll double check that with the mining tool, but yeah. Okay, ring A of planet 10. Superb. Yeah, that's right. It's the only gas giant anyway, so Yeah, they got these little fleet carriers parked here. It's an opportunity anyway to obviously sell if there's a good price with the fleet carriers locally. Some people do give good prices for mining. The rest of the time, it's a good place to sort of repair and rearm and buy new limpets. Obviously, I mean, if I'd have known 100% there was definitely like good fleet carriers out here, I expected there were, but I didn't know 100% that was going to be the case. So that's why I brought the limpets with me. Probably been easier for jump range if I had actually done it this way around, but still, I'm not too bothered. So it's the A ring I'm looking for. Yeah, no problems. I think with material hunting, it's definitely an art in its own right, because obviously, depending on what you're looking for, some of the G4 and G5s are very rare and a pain to get a hold of. Especially some of the scan materials. I mean, some of the data is just it's kind of ludicrous sometimes. Depends exactly what you're looking for, but yeah. In some ways, the thing that irritates me the most is actually I like the fact that you can trade for materials, but the fact that all the like trade ratios are ridiculous. Like you usually need like 6 or 7 of the previous level of materials to trade up to the next level. Some and like 2 levels different, you need like 50 of them or 100 plus or whatever. It can get kind of insane very, very quickly. I suppose the opportunity does at least exist to do that, or you can like obviously trade like other G4s for G4 materials, grade 5 for grade 5, so on and so forth. That's good. I mean, that's very necessary. Okay. I just want the A-ring, I don't need anything else. I'll just put a few in for good luck. Cool, here we are. I think some of the materials, especially as they say, the G5 one, that's going to be very difficult to find and max those out. I mean, it's useful, 100%. I understand where you're coming from. But yeah, some of them are just very hard. And they don't come across very often. So I'm looking for the triple hotspot here. Okay. It's probably these. Triple overlap. Okay, that's probably not this one then. Bromolite hotspot. Ah, tritium hotspot. When I don't need it, it's there. See what else there is here. Low temperature diamonds. Yeah. As far as I can tell, there isn't like a massive amount of overlaps around here. I'll just go around the ring just to be sure, but this one here is low temperature. That one, bromolite, low temperature diamonds as well. Bromolite, exandrite. Yeah, let's fly around the ring just to be sure. Wow, grinding for a few months. That is a long time to be doing that, yeah. No, I mean, I've often described looking for materials as being like going on a quest, because sometimes it really is. And yeah, you're right. There are certain places and certain techniques that you can get to get different materials in different places. But you don't do literally the same thing for all that time. It just got some variety to it, even if it's different materials you're looking for. But yeah, I understand why when you've got the opportunity to get lots of one particular kind, you'll try for others. Like while you're there, you might as well try and get as many as you can, especially for the high grade ones. I think for engineering generally, this is to everyone. engineering generally is like if you can get the highest grade materials, grades 4 and 5, you can get some amazing pieces of engineering in your ships for those. And that's why people always talk about finding these sort of high grade materials. It's because they are just the high grades of engineering, which these materials consume like there's no tomorrow, are the best ones. But then again, if it was easy, it wouldn't be so much fun. A lot of people do complain that the grind is a bit unnecessary in Elite. Now, it depends for what it is. Some things it is, and some things it isn't. Some materials it's not actually that bad. Some materials are very easy to find. Some are moderate. Some actually, even something like G4 and G5 ones are easier to find than you would think. And some are decidedly, this is the triple hotspot. Aha. What I was looking for all along. Right. Now, this is, as always, strategically trying to place my ship in the right place to maximize the chances of finding what I want. I think it's probably here, and trying to work out the approximate location of like the optimum part of the hotspot where it overlaps. Now, this is like, there's a certain mathematics involved as well, but because I haven't taken a picture and done an actual calculation, this is a sort of rough guess, an educated guess nonetheless, but still I'm going to be putting it where I'm aiming the ship. So that should be fun. Here we go. Yeah. When you say hawks, do you mean Pave Hawk? That guy. Pave Hawker. Because he does good videos. Good streams as well, I should say. For those of you who've never seen Pave Hawk streams, is like, they're quite amazing. I mean, he's just got this voice that's just like, it sounds like a sort of an amazing radio announcer's like voice. It's just like, how is this guy like not on a radio show somewhere? It's just quite amazing. It's very difficult to describe, but it sort of sounds like a very authoritative kind of voice, like very convincing sort of voice. Even if he's doing something really ordinary, it's like a very sort of very charismatic voice, I would say. But yeah. It's a good question, actually. I hadn't looked at the status of the system in terms of security. How much am I going to get harassed by pirates, NPC pirates, but looking for Mikago. Yeah, the ring is very pretty. I'm just going to maneuver slightly towards the gas giant for effect. To be fair, Vantablack, I'm not actually sure what the deal is with linking stuff, on streams. In terms of like copyrights and stuff, I don't think it's. I mean, probably okay, but if anyone's got the time to, because at the moment I can't actually click on the video because I'm literally in an asteroid field, but yeah. Feel free to talk to me about it without much as you want, though. Who's trying to, he's trying to be naughty. Shall I melt him down or shall I leave him alone? I think I might have to melt him down, actually. I just get annoyed with these types. It's like, seriously, just leave me alone. You're forcing me to melt you down. Well, if he wants to. Be good use for the limpets anyway. It's a good way of getting materials, actually, destroying ships. Okay. Yeah, certain ships also have certain materials on them. Now, this being a Cobra 3 probably hasn't got anything special, but got chemical processes, that's nothing to be sniffed at. Some good stuff. Yeah, that's a good question actually about the oh, Hawks Gaming. Okay, yeah. I thought it was a different person to you were talking about, but I think I've heard of that one as well. Yeah, let's click on the system map. What is the security status of this place? I should really have checked before I. Oh, it's anarchy. Oh, fair enough. I'm not going to get the system defense forces hassling me in that case for blowing him up prematurely. Okay, back to what I was here for. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good YouTube channels for some various guides. I mean, one of the famous and most effective ones I find is also Down to Earth Gaming. He's got one of the most comprehensive sort of series of YouTube guides, I think, on like most aspects of Elite, and he does keep it fairly up to date as well. So yeah, I definitely like him. Okay. Yeah, I think most people know Down to Earth astronomy. I think he's one of these people that obviously like the balance between like YouTubing and streaming is slightly. There's kind of similar skills, but not exactly the same. There is like an overlap between them. Like Down to Earth Astronomy's videos are like one of the best out there. His streams are good, but they're not quite as amazing because obviously, like I say, it's a different sort of. It is a different skill, really, in many ways. Some people are probably good at both, but there's probably not many of those. The same with Yamix, I would say, is exactly the same kind of thing. He's a really good YouTuber, but he's not really. His streams are good, and they definitely have their moments. I mean, they're definitely very fun as well. But yeah, it's a different sort of balance, really. Because I think obviously with a YouTube video, you can edit it to your heart's content, and yeah, do as many takes as you need, obviously. But streaming's it's basically performance art, isn't it? Really, because you're going out live to people, so it is really a sort of it's a performance in a way. I mean, the thing with myself is like because I've done a lot of expeditions, sort of event organizing, I'm kind of used to talking to people like this all the time, so it's kind of that kind of skill overlaps with streaming, so it seems to be sort of something. Thought that yeah, I can try that. Looks interesting. See what happens. Right. See what I've got here. Tritium, if I was looking for it, would be nice, but I'm not looking for it at the moment. hmm. Don't really need water right now. So nothing really that I want from that. Try elsewhere. What other YouTubers do you like to watch then? So I think there's always a few sort of big YouTubers that everyone knows, and then there's like the sort of middling to small ones uh, that are kind of interesting. They're more sort of niche ones that not everyone's necessarily aware of. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, plenty of tritium again. I don't really need that right now, though. I'll keep looking though. Yeah, I'm gonna keep flying forwards. It's quite bright here, at least. That's a good thing. I mean, there can be an interesting sort of effect when it's completely dark and you're just going by either the lights or by night vision. Slightly spooky, but yeah, it's nice in a different kind of way. Okay. I think with mining, you just be quite patient, really. You don't always find what you want immediately. Yeah, I'm not finding very much so far, but you can only ever just keep going, really, with these. Probability is you'll find stuff sooner or later. I think at least with this level of mining, you don't actually need a massive ship and a huge amount of equipment to do it. I say with a Cobra or like, you know, a Type 7, you can do some pretty good mining with those, with laser mining. So I think at least that's kind of accessible to sort of fairly new players as well. Come on, come on. Ah, there we are. That's the one. Low temperature diamonds, 23%. Better get some collector limpets out there. Yeah, no more ships harassing me, thankfully. Cross my fingers. Ah, cool. Here we are. Yeah, this ship's running a bit hot, isn't it? I have a few temperature warnings. But that's cool. I mean, this is the thing. It's much easier. Obviously, if you've got 4 lasers to melt an asteroid enough to get all these lovely fragments that you like. You're gonna keep looking further afield for some good asteroids. I'm gonna move slightly further from the asteroid now, when I'm collecting the fragments, and yeah, keep on firing off. Look at the Prospector limpets. I think, as far as streaming is concerned, mining for Soul Ship is maybe not as exciting as it could be potentially. Oh, hi, sorry, Derek Johns. Nearly sort of ran my own microphone for a second, but how's it going? Yeah, I think I should move on from this asteroid. Click on a few more of these just to get a nice array. How's everyone in chat doing generally? Yeah, plenty of tritium here today. Well, the fleet carriers are nearby, so yeah. Nice place to refuel for them. Oh, that's cool. No. Oh, also elite mining today. Ah, fair enough. What are you mining at the moment? I'm having an okay day. I didn't maybe sleep as well as I'd have liked, but otherwise I'm fine. bit of a change of pace elite-wise, doing some mining after sort of flying around trying to do exploration and related things of late. Alpha testing and things. Getting the knack of this streaming lark. Because that's the thing, there is an overlap between this and event organising, but there are different skills as well involved, so it's kind of interesting for me to be doing something a little bit different. Yeah, that makes sense. Platinum Osmium particularly. Yeah, I mean, Vanta Black was saying that earlier about the way that sort of osmium and platinum have actually become quite viable commodities. Because in the past, you just like would completely discard them, and it wouldn't matter because you always wanted other things. You wanted low temperature diamonds. You wanted painite. Painite at the moment is not actually that lucrative. Diamonds, yeah, they are still. BGS rules. Yeah, that's fair enough. I think with the osmium mining, it's not actually as easy to find as I thought, because you always seem to find it when you don't want to and you're mining for other things. At least in my experience anyway. But to actually find concentrations of osmium seems to be quite problematic. I did try a couple of times to find good osmium spots, but it didn't really work out. Platinum I was a bit more successful at. This is always the case with all the counts as well. It's having a good amount of engineering on them, or keeping them sort of topped up with different engineering mats. I think if you've got more than one account, there's always possibility for confusion as well, thinking that, didn't I just do that already? It's like, no, that was on the other account. It's like, oh yes, that's true. No, you're right. The market's definitely more fair and more interesting in many ways. Yeah, the sort of gold rush time does seem to be pretty much over for good now. Which is, as they say, kind of more sustainable. I don't think there's any low temperature diamonds in these rocks. Them there rocks. Yeah, no, it's a good point about Colonia and Seoul being different kind of places. And this is the thing, I mean, Colonia is really its completely own ecosystem, really. Economic ecosystem. And then the bubble is just different. Again, the bubble is just so much larger in every way, and there's obviously all these sort of sub-markets as well within it. But Colonia mining has definitely always been an interesting thing, because that's been like since the start of Colonia, mining was always a very big part of it. Not just by practicality, but by sort of by culture as well, you know. I think when I first went out there, when the first people said to me are the people who'd made it before, which was not too many actually, to be fair, it's like, okay, we need miners desperately at the moment. And yeah, that's still a thing even now. For those who've never been to Colonia, I would recommend it. Some people will love it, some people will be bored by it. It's just like anything in Elite, really. But it's always best to try these things, because you never know. So you might find it really enjoyable. I mean, it's a very beautiful place, the Colonia Nebula. Because when people say Colonia, it's like it is the whole nebula. It's got quite a few dozen inhabited systems in it. It is like, it really is a mini bubble. It's not an exaggeration with its own little engineers and everything. But because it's kind of isolated as well from the main bubble, it's it's a very different kind of world. It is like and it has a kind of different culture as well in many ways amongst the factions out there. I used to be involved with a faction out of Colonia for quite a long time, so that was quite an interesting experience. I made a lot of friends that way, and it was good fun for a long time. Which then I sort of then branched out again into sort of, because I've always been an explorer throughout all these periods of time, but sort of a Colonia-based explorer for a while as well. No, absolutely, Derek. Totally. There's like a lot of unexplored systems around them to put your name on. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. You don't have to go very far in Colonia to find one. To find a place that you can put your name on and be the first discoverer of it. Also, I think the whole area surrounding Colonia Nebula has so many different interesting natural features. There's so many nebula around there. It's almost ridiculous, actually. The whole sort of festival grounds area on the map. That's the thing about Colonia. It's always been like an explorer's forward base, really. It's been a location where explorers can sort of, sell their data and move on with. I know with like fleet carriers these days, it's not maybe quite as important as it once was, because you can sell stuff obviously to a fleet carrier, probably not too far away from where you are. But yeah, definitely worth a trip if people haven't been there. I think these days it's kind of easier to visit because of fleet carriers. You just need to find a fleet carrier that's going there, and if you don't know how to find one, go to what's the place called again? The Fleet Carriers Owners Club, I think it is. I'll just bring up the details so I can put it in the chat. But it's a Discord, and don't let the title put you off. Don't have to be an owner of a fleet carrier to be in that, even though it's primarily set up for that. It's like the owners of fleet carriers saying where they're going and what they're doing in the near future. Like some saying, I'm going to be doing a run to Colonia starting this Saturday, for example, and I'm going off at like 1600 in game time, and that's when the fleet carrier will jump out of the bubble. Stuff like that, really. I'll put the link in the chat in a second. But yeah, it's because I did a run to Colonia about a few months ago off the back of that, just to see what the experience was like. If we have a long haul fleet carrier run, and it was kind of amusing because I just sort of stayed there on the fleet carrier and sort of like rode it out that far, and just sort of like logged in a couple of days later, and bingo, I was in Colonia. I think some people do shuttle runs between the bubble and Colonia. Some of them are going to other places. They're going on to Beagle Point or Sagittarius A Star, or lots of other locations around. But Colonia is unsurprisingly quite a big destination for fleet carriers. Yeah, I'm just looking for the link at the moment. Bear with me for just a second. I can find it. Here we are, Fleet Carriers Owners Club. Yeah, it's quite a friendly Discord as well, so I would generally recommend it. People regularly advertise for their various trips to different places. It's like common routes, for example, like Bubble Colonia, Bubble Sagittarius A Star, so on and so forth down the line. Bringing up the invite, copying that. Fleet Carriers Owners Club. Discord for carrier trips. Yeah, it's in the chat now, so anyone who wants to see that, if you want to take a trip on a fleet carrier going somewhere, that's the best place to find one and see who's going where. And a lot of them will ask for like tritium donations. unsurprisingly, because obviously, yeah, you've got to fuel the carrier, and they make a certain amount of money also from they take a cut basically from all like the Universal Cartographics and other sales on the carrier. But yeah, tritium donations are the key one. Right, back to mining. In game, you can keep talking about Colonia whatever you like. In the meantime, it's all good. I think out in those further settlements like Colonia or even like the Witch Head colonies, or the California Nebula ones, there's that sense of isolation really from like the rest of humanity, that sort of almost like frontiersman, Wild West feeling to it a little bit. I mean, some people take the Wild West thing a little bit too far, but it's kind of funny though at the same time. Because obviously Colonia kind of came about by accident in the first place. I don't think it was ever a plan of Frontier to have a settlement that far out, but it did kind of happen by accident. But as I say, yeah, these days you're not far from a DSSA carrier in any area of the galaxy. But that was the whole point, really, to provide a sort of permanent base there. So technically these are mobile stations, but they're not mobile anymore. Hence the DSSA designation. Is it going to collide with that? Is it going to hit the asteroid? Yeah, it has. Bingo. Contacts. Okay. Yeah, you definitely need patience to be a miner. Because of all the false positives you get, or I say false positives, I mean you click on the prospector limpet and then you look and think, oh, it hasn't got what I want, and sometimes it can be ages before finding anything. Then you find a whole bunch of stuff that you're looking for. I mean, some people describe it as a very zen experience, and I can see what they mean. I think especially with mining, if I've got a purpose in mind, like I've got a particular, money goal that I want to buy, a carrier or a new ship or whatever, then it's a better motivation. Mining with no goal in mind is a little bit of a dead end for my own motivation with an elite anyway, but that's just the way it is. Everyone's different. Sort of pristine white, some of these asteroids. Would they actually be that reflective in real life? Maybe. I suppose if they were close to the star, maybe they would. A lot of things in space are dirty snowballs anyway, especially comets. Okay, nearly within range. Time to melt it down. One thing I was going to say that is actually quite spectacular and is one of the best things about mining is if you have a bunch of people in a wing all mining together, it's actually technically more efficient. You get slightly greater productivity from the same asteroid. But it's also the fact you've got all these lasers firing off at the same time. It can look pretty impressive. All these sorts of tens of different limpets flying everywhere all at once. It's nice to look at. There's some very good recordings of that on YouTube. Let me guess, Derek Jones, you forgot your limpets? very easily done, this is the thing. Think about everything else apart from the limpets. And it's the one thing that you need. Okay, asteroid scan. Yeah. I think this is the thing about going to one of these bubble or colonial related systems where there is actually, it's a known mining system and there are fleet carriers. At least you've got the safety net of having limpet replenishment in the system. If you don't though, it's a bit embarrassing. I suppose you can technically synthesize a few, but there's a pretty inefficient way of doing it, because only, like, was it 3 at a time or something like that? It's not great. It's like hydrogen peroxide, it's just like a bleach floating around in space. It's like, okay. I'll try over this side instead to see what it's offering to me. Oh, these fragments need collecting anyway. Yeah, group mining's definitely more fun, I think. I think most things in Elite are actually more fun if you do them with people. Even seemingly boring activities can actually come to life. Yeah, you're right. With synth research, recon limpets, etc., it's not so bad because you have a tiny double to synthesize. But yeah, it's great. Oh, thank you, Vanta Black, for the following. Much appreciated. Like the little Yoshi dance as well. I thought that was pretty fun. Yeah. No, it's true, isn't it? You say for like mining, you need so many limpets, and synthesizing them is, it's just a pain. If you need only a tiny number, yeah, you're right. For like research or collection, it's not so bad, but yeah, can be irritating. Especially got a really big ship like a cutter or a corvette or whatever it might be. Synthesizing hundreds of tons of limpets is not going to be funny. But that's the thing, if you're in the middle of nowhere, then you don't have any choice, you just have to do that. I've heard of like heroic stories of individual fleet carrier owners by themselves in the middle of nowhere having to like refuel their carriers just by themselves, and it takes a while. And with a bunch of people, it's not such. Well, it still can take amount of time, but it's not so problematic. Like obviously, like expeditions having a bunch of the people doing it at the same time, refueling a carrier becomes a lot easier. But yeah, even like a cutter by itself is like refueling a carrier is going to take a while. And even then, you don't really get any sort of economic benefit from it. It's just the carrier's now going to move again. Yay! As always with these things in Elite, though, it just depends what you want to do, where you want to go. Really what your sort of plan is, I suppose. I mean, you could just go out there into the black by yourself, with a carrier, having a mining ship fitted out, and just go by yourself, sort of slowly going from place to place over a long period of time. That's perfectly viable. It's not efficient, but it definitely can be done. Well, there you go. That is heroic. I mean, I've never done that personally, and because it does sound like very, very, very hard work to be able to get there. Yeah. It's interesting the way that the carrier mechanics work, though, because obviously it becomes more efficient as the carrier gets lighter, which is quite realistic. Think on the Mercury's Wings expedition, the carrier actually range was greater than I thought it was going to be. I think everyone else thought it was going to be as well, actually, because as it got progressively lighter, it just became much more efficient. Obviously, it depends how much fuel you need to get for a carrier as well. I mean, if you need like a full replenishment, that's going to be a long time. Yeah, I mean, I think when the carriers first came out, the mechanics or the numbers were a bit off, but they, to be fair to Frontier, they did change it quite quickly, so it was a bit more reasonable. So it was still a challenge to keep them fuel, but just the numbers weren't silly. I think also there's so many more carriers out there in the game than Frontier ever anticipated. I think they originally thought it was going to be like big groups basically would be the only ones who would get them, and I think it was probably a better idea, at least originally, to have like tied them to groups, or you'd have to have like a fantastic amount of money privately to get one. But because obviously a lot of people bought them, and that's where you get systems sort of filled up with them. I mean, so I'm not disparaging anyone who's got one at the moment because I've got one as well, but it's but yeah, because originally I intended to get one, as I did end up having it for a group or sort of a collective purpose anyway. But yeah, the sorts of private ones and like just for your own commander, just for that and that sake alone. I mean, those ones are a lot more common, I think, than Frontier ever anticipated they'd be. And you see in the bubble, there's certain systems, and there's just maxed out with fleet carriers everywhere, and it's kind of comical, really. And in some places, obviously, like key systems and like engineer systems and like high populated systems, obviously mining locations like this have just gotten almost like everywhere you look, there's a fleet carrier parked. Thank you, computer. Asteroid scans have been completed. And they have nothing that I want on them. I'm going to have to keep going. That's all you can do. Keep cracking on. But this is the thing with Elite generally, isn't it? I think if you don't have some kind of level of patience, you'll never get anywhere, because it's almost like a warning on the box, and it's sort of like, requires patience. Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted in that regard. One thing about carrier ownership that I never really anticipated quite as much as like the actual core reality was, I understood it wasn't a cheap thing to have and it was going to be expensive, but it was just like looking at the upgrade prices for all the different things, like putting in universal cartographics. I think putting in the ship bit, particularly for the shipyard, it's like, yeah, the yard costs a certain amount. Okay, that's expensive. And then you'd put in the ships, and it's like, this is insane. These just putting in a few ships of even like quite a basic kind is just an absolute fortune. If you had to equip for like selling high end ships, it's like, how much money would you need? It's like more money than I've ever had, definitely, across all my accounts to start selling the bigger ships. It's like, wow, this is quite mad, actually. I mean, somebody out there's probably done it, I'm sure they have, but yeah, well, hats off to them. No, absolutely, Derek. You're totally. It can be dominating asset because it is going to be the most expensive thing you will ever own in the game. And it is. I mean, the maintenance costs alone are massive. I mean, my carrier's got most things on it, and it's like 25 million a week, 100 million a month, 1.2 billion a year. And that's just pure maintenance. That's nothing else. That's just sitting doing nothing. And it's 1.2 billion a year. Yeah, that's an interesting thought actually about populated systems and parking fees. Because you're right, because some of them aren't really doing much good if you've got a system that's just overpopulated. I mean, if I had a carrier that was in one of those systems, I'd just move it somewhere else because it's not doing anybody any good at all. Yeah, that's the thing with the fleet carriers in the bubble. A lot of them in the high density systems are just duplicating functions with each other. They're not providing anything interesting or new, or different services even. You know. But yeah, absolutely, fleet carriers are not for the faint-hearted or the faint of pocket either. They cost a lot of money and they take a lot of maintenance. I mean, basically, if you want one, you've got to have either saved up an insane amount of money, literally billions and billions. Alternatively, you have to actually spend a lot of time mining and doing other things just to keep the money coming in to keep the carrier going, you know. That's the way it is. Okay. Put the hydrogen peroxide here. There's some methane chlorothrate. Methanol monohydrate. Aha. Another one. Superb. You turn up to crash into the asteroid. The thing with a big shot like this, it's best to fly slightly cautiously around the asteroids, even if you've got quite a good shield, which I do. It's to stop accidentally scraping your hull if you impact an asteroid. They say, especially with a cutter, it does not slow down very well. So in an asteroid field, you've got to be careful. That's why I don't speed up very much in this. Yeah, with the fleet carriers, I think if you're a member of a group and you've got sort of regular use for it like that, it becomes a bit more sort of an interactive asset rather than just your own sort of personal asset. But that's the thing is, there's different ways of playing it, as always. But also, I don't think Frontier ever foresaw the fact that the carriers themselves would become an asset like the DSSA has become. Effectively, like a whole series of new space stations, really. Because the stationary ones out in distant sectors of the galaxy had just become stations. They're technically mobile stations, but they've not moved such a long period of time. They might as well just be completely fixed. The collection's been pretty efficient at the moment. So I think with the carriers, they are such expensive assets. I'm not sure I'd necessarily always recommend it. I would say if you want to get one, absolutely do that. Just keep in mind it is going to be a very expensive thing to keep running and a very expensive thing to buy and then to outfit, because when you buy them, there's not much in them. I mean, apart from like the drive and like the fuel tanks, there are very few assets on the carrier that come as standard. Almost everything has to be bought. I think it's basically like the skeleton of the ship, basically the hull, the crew, the navigation system, the jump drive, and not much else really. Even basic things like Universal Color Graphics has to be sort of purchased as an extra sort of module really. So yeah, lots of things that you would that you kind of just expect from stations or outposts that you have to buy them as extra modules. Got proximity warning going off there. There's the asteroid behind me. I'm in no real danger though, he says before it gets clobbered by the asteroid. Famous last words. No, absolutely, Derek. It is a great example of how broad and skilled the community is. I mean, I always find it remarkable every time there's like a new innovation or something, anything new in the game at all, the way it gets used in unexpected and quite inventive ways. There's so much emergent gameplay that's come from so many different things. Yeah, totally. There was things like say the hull seals, fuel rats. Yeah, that's a good point. New parts initiative as well. Burpit. Yeah, all of those are great. Absolutely. I think the whole seals and fuel rats, particularly being kind of universally sort of acknowledged and famous sort of entities within the Elite universe. Burr's quite famous as well, but yeah, the other as are sort of pretty much known like across the world and all throughout all communities. Yeah, no, it's and the DSSA is another sort of, as you say, another emergent bit of gameplay from the community, or another asset. I mean, if you think about it, it's like hard to think of many game communities and sort of an MMO or any kind of community in gaming that would actually spend such a high proportion of their own assets in universe assets to do something for other people like that. It's not common. I mean, there probably are some, but it's, as you say, it's like the amount of sort of like community spirit that people have is quite extraordinary. I mean, I'm used to it, but it sometimes surprises me. No, I can't find low temperature diamond here. Onward I plough. Yeah, I think some also DSSA carriers near sort of major shipping lanes have an easier time of paying their way, with people coming and selling data and, buying services, etc. There's some carriers on the more sort of distant sectors that almost get nobody coming in through them at all. So it's it's sort of very much a sort of mixed bag, but it's a good thing that the services are all there in these different places. I mean, my own carrier is so far away, I've literally not seen it since the end of the expedition to deploy it. It's like literally like 60,000 light years away, so it's not the work of a moment to get there. Hmm. I will have to be patient again. Okay, Mr. Asteroid. What do you have to tell me? Like the mist there, where you can see straight through the asteroids into the way the edge of the ring, and the sort of the way that the atmosphere, well, you call it an atmosphere, the sort of vapor hangs around in front of the gas giant. I mean, the truth is, with my own carrier in that far sector, I probably might visit it like once again or twice again, maybe ever, if I'm ever going to do that. In the meantime, it's just remote access, and that's it, really. It's a good thing we can actually do that, because I think it would have been the death of the whole DSSA program, and it would have never happened in the first place if you couldn't do it remotely. I mean, yeah, keep money coming into it and be able to like change things on the carrier at a distance. Hello, Raven. Yeah, that is beautiful, isn't it? How are you doing today? No, that's cool, Raven. It's always good to have a project and get excited about it, and just keep on going. I think one thing I have noticed with a lot of people in this sort of whole pandemic era is in that there's a lot of people sort of spending a lot of time on, because they've got more time at hands a lot of the time, you know, because they're at home more. Even if you're working from home, you're still at home more, and you're able to like dedicate more time to like doing various things in elite groups, or exploring more, or do whatever more, more combat, just more of everything, really. I think you've got to try and look to the positive, really, because it'd be very easy these days to see the negative, really. So I mean, I think the elite community itself and the way that elite is kind of, you know, tends to attract that kind of mentality, or makes you kind of think in a more sort of calm and kind of big picture way. Because yeah, you're in space most of the time, and space is just amazing and massive, and you're insignificant to it, and it's like taking a step outside of your own like mundane reality. But that's one of the attractions of Elite, really, isn't it? Or even other space games, for that matter. It's taking a step so far beyond the mundane. It's I think it's psychologically a really good thing. I'm sure a lot of people feel a very similar way to myself. I know a lot of people do, so yeah. We wouldn't be here if we didn't feel a little bit that way. I think even I've heard a lot of even the sort of, so we say, the more cynical parts of the community, the so we say hardcore PvPers, even some them, actually people who would agree that the sort of awe and beauty of space is a wonderful thing as well, even if they don't indulge in it maybe quite as much as other communities do, but that's just the way it is. But yeah, obviously I'm not knocking PvPers at all, but you know what I mean. There's a certain kinds of PvP types, the very sort of like ultra combat focused ones. No, absolutely, Derek. Yeah, it's that sense of awe and the sense of insignificance and just the beauty of it all. But that's why I think as we get levels of it added, like Horizons was a step, another layer. Odyssey is going to be another layer of sort of detail and fine tuning. Really, I mean, I'm under no illusions. I don't think Odyssey is going to be perfect when it comes out, but I think like Horizons, it's going to be fine tuned. Um, I mean, when Horizons was first beaten, it wouldn't even work on my machine. It was like it was in not the best of state, shall we say. When it first came out, it was a bit rough and ready, but it got refined pretty quickly. And I think something similar is going to be happening about now for Odyssey. I'm crossing my fingers that's the case anyway. No, absolutely, Raven. It's I think we're all hoping for more sort of thick atmospheric worlds as obviously the next step after these thin atmospheric worlds we're getting for Odyssey, and that's going to be the really big step forward in future, because we'll see like Harmonia worlds, water worlds, Earth-like worlds, all the big ones with their own weather systems. Exactly, more plant life and animals. I think animals, think particularly, are kind of obviously more complicated to simulate. But then again, it's like Frontier's got the technology. I mean, I don't know if you've seen like their what's it called, Planet Zoo, and also the Jurassic World games. The those kind of very complex animal sort of generation, animation, etc. I mean, they know what they're doing. They've got the technology for it, definitely. So it's just a matter of time, really. I think. Yeah. Because they do move people around in house, different developers between different games at different times, depending what the demand is for them. And some of the people who originally worked on like the early Elite were moved on to some of the other ones I was just talking about. Planet Coaster as well, but that doesn't have so many animals in it. That has people though, and people are a complicated animal to assimilate. So I mean, it's all there. I mean, one thing about obviously the sort of, should we say, criticism somewhat of the first-person shooter elements of Odyssey today have been more to do with like it's like not a bad first-person shooter, but it's not a great one either. But I don't remember Frontier ever really having much of a history of making FPS games. Actually, I'm struggling to think they made any at all. Maybe if they did, it was a long time ago, and I don't remember what it was, because they have made things like the roller coaster tycoon, Planet Coaster sort of series of games, and they say more recently like Planet Zoo and Jurassic World, and they've made so many games over the years as well. Different kinds. They tended to make more sort of like simulation and strategic kind of games or management games. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the actual shooty part of the sort of Space Legs thing, the FPS part. I've not actually played that properly yet because I've just been busy doing the exploration parts of it and just getting everything to work really in a sort of pleasing way. I mean, I say with the FPS stuff, it really depends who you talk to. Some people seem very happy with it. Some people seem deeply cynical. There's like a massive range of opinions about that, more than all the other aspects of Odyssey. Most of the other bits of Odyssey tends to be, more positive noises about. Apart from that weird mini game, though, that was almost universally sort of criticised as well. The bioscanner one. That's being changed anyway. Frontier pretty quickly have come around and say, yeah, we acknowledge that's not very good and we are going to change it. Well, I'm glad they're listening. I mean, it's definitely positive. Yeah, this is the thing, Raven. It's I think all elements of Odyssey are going to need work. I mean, things that seem to be the most solid are stuff that like Horizons already does well. Obviously, like the space travel part, stuff connected with the ships really are pretty much good as they are at the moment. They're not perfect, but they're pretty solid. And all the little details as well to do with the planetary tech, because they've said that not all the planetary tech has actually been debuted within the alpha, which is interesting because I would have assumed that they would have done that, even if it was like maybe phase 4 or something, but apparently not. They said that there are elements of the planetary sort of surfaces that aren't going to be there until the actual full release comes out. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You see, what's being held back is going to be because I'm trying to sort of like make an educated guess about what it might be compared to what other public statements they've been making over the years. Because I think they once were talking about very sort of cave systems as well. I wonder if that's something they're holding back potentially. Another thing is to do with maybe Thargoid bases and more sort of complicated versions of those. It's an interesting point, Vanta Black. Sorry, I didn't see that for a second. About some of the earliest videos looked very different to today's incarnation. Yeah, it has changed a lot since first release, because obviously that's mostly just the base game and a very early version of the base game. I mean, some things are still quite similar to then, but like some of the internals of the spacecraft are like vaguely similar, or a lot of the spacecraft are externally pretty similar. But yeah, you're right. Lots of things have kind of evolved. Most of them for the better, I'd say. But that's the thing with Elite. It's been a long-term project. It was always meant to be like a decade-long or more, project that was going to keep on evolving. I think that like most MMOs, they are almost like a perpetual eternal work in progress. I mean, you look at things like, well, okay, not so much World of Warcraft because that's not such directly comparable, but then in terms of longevity, that's a good example. But Eve as well, and that's been around for a long time. I mean, the original roadmap, I think, for Elite was a 10-year time span, but they're so far behind on that, it's going to stretch way beyond 10 years, I think. I mean, it would not surprise me if this game existed 20 years from its original launch. And yeah, considering we're already, let me see, 6-ish of years after that, 7 years after its initial launch, yeah. It's an interesting point, Derek, about the space legs. It's just, I think, really just adding a new dimension to Elite, really. But as you say, it's like you can't really reinvent the wheel as far as first-person shooters go, because I was saying myself recently that there are so many better first-person shooters out there. It's just an interesting sort of sub-element of Elite that it's there if you want it. I think the sort of combat element of it. Obviously, there might be other more exploration related things, or maybe like even like crime related things you want to do, like stealing plans and stuff like that from a station and trying to get out without being shot at. Things like that seem to me like potentially quite interesting. No, absolutely, Vantablack. I think a lot of people feel the same way about exploration. Yeah, exploration is like obviously the key thing for a lot of people, and obviously just going onto new worlds and being the first person to set foot upon them, the Armstrong moment, as it's popularly called, that's a big thing. I mean, I won't deny it. That's going to be amazing, going to somewhere that no one else has been before, even in the Elite universe, and being just the first person to set foot on that world, and maybe the only person who will ever again set foot on that world. That's going to be a thing, and it's going to be amazing. But yeah, also say Raven, as we were saying, the whole thing about sneaking in and out of installations, that could be quite intriguing. But again, that's like obviously like Bubble and Colonia in inhabited kind of space gameplay. And then exploration is a whole different thing again. One thing that so far that not that many people have talked about, even on streams or videos, YouTube videos, is about the SRV. And it's like the SRV has actually changed quite a lot in its handling and its sort of characteristics. I mean, I'm not really sure it's changed for the better either. It's like one thing I have noticed is it's very fragile now. I mean, it always was quite fragile, but it seems even more fragile than it was, and that's not a good thing. It's more easily damaged now than it was. At low speed, not like falling onto something or crashing into a rock, but just like hitting medium or small rocks, not going that fast either. That's interesting, Raven. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that if other people had noticed this, because I was just driving around the other day. I wasn't even doing very much. I think I was on the stream, and it was just I was being very cautious. I was deliberately not pushing it just to see what the new SRV model was like and how it felt, and pretty casual stuff really. I wasn't like going a million miles an hour or anything. So it surprised me. Like all of a sudden, I was looking to obviously to do synth repair, then realised I didn't actually have any materials to do that because it's obviously on an alpha test and I haven't accumulated the materials yet for it. But yeah, it would be a shame if it remains so fragile, because we had to spend a lot of time repairing it in that case, and it's going to sort of take away from the flow of gameplay. Because not as if it was like a sort of monster truck, invulnerable sort of beast in the first place. The SRV was even in Horizons, it's not the strongest of vehicles. Yeah, it's always that amusing thing about the SRV, like in certain aspects it's quite strong, like the front forks or the front wheels are weirdly strong, like almost like indestructible. If you land on those, you're absolutely fine. If you land on anything else, that it's just like tinfoil. It's kind of weird, but yeah, it can be quite amusing sometimes. But yeah, if it gets any weaker, it won't be good for the gameplay. And trying to explore like that is going to be almost impossible if you're having to like constantly synth repair it. But yeah, I mean that's the SRV thing is definitely an issue that needs solving. But it's not I mean, the actual sort of motion of it, the vehicle characteristics have changed. They're not bad, the new ones. It does seem a bit grippier in many ways. That's the positive part. And the SRV was always quite a low grip kind of, vehicle, and especially in low gravity. I mean, that's kind of everyone's used to that by now. But it almost seems a bit kind of too easy to drive and a bit too grippy because the SRV's always been quite a challenge to handle. But yes, you're not expecting it to have that much grip. I mean, a little bit more would be cool, or like a new kind of SRV by having more grip would make more sense, you know. Or if you added a new mode to it, you know, like I think a lot of people have mentioned, if you actually have like, you know, if you, I know at the moment if you've got assist on it, it's not the same I'm talking about, but if you had like a traction control kind of mode where you switched it on and therefore it would have more grip all of a sudden, that would make sense because you can turn it off if you want to, so you got that choice. I think lots of like a bit like, you know, FA off in when you're flying around. If you want to do that, you can. If you don't want to do that, then you don't have to. It should be an option. A rock spawning in front of you when you drive. Yeah, that has happened before. But again, to be fair, that's also happened in Horizons at times as well. Also, like, you know, the floating rocks above the surface. That's quite a well-known bug even in Horizons. Here we go, low temperature diamonds. Yeah, the SRV question has been mentioned relatively little compared to SpaceX. I understand the excitement, obviously, around being able to walk around stations and, you know, go pew pew against people, or against NPCs, I should say, and other people on planetary surfaces. But yeah, it's comparatively speaking, the SRV has been talked about quite a bit less. But you know, I hope that changes as well. I think as like phase four begins, people might start to notice it a bit more as well. I think those who are sort of a bit more exploration oriented might have already tested the SRV more than anyone else. I mean, I certainly did just to see what, you know, the differences were. The actual foot mechanics, I think, were quite good overall in terms of, you know, the way that the body moves, and it seems to be quite sort of realistic and quite plausible. So I like that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. To Breath Frontier, they do seem to spend a good amount of time trying to like do their research on the body and its movement. It isn't kind of cartoony. It does actually seem to be quite realistic, and that helps a lot. But that also goes even more strange as to why the SRV has changed all of a sudden. Because spending all this time, understandably so, with the new mechanics of walking on foot, why change the SRV? That's what I don't get. It's like the SRV's been the same for so long. And it's like I can understand maybe little tweaks here or there, maybe change the model very slightly, but it seems to have been almost like just completely changed, like it's a different vehicle all of a sudden. I think that's the thing that surprised me the most was that it didn't seem like the same. It looks the same, obviously, but it doesn't feel like the same vehicle at all. But yeah, see, I can't complain at all about the sort of the basic on foot in the spacesuit kind of model. I mean, I've quite enjoyed the outings I've had on planets and that. I do like the fact you've got different spacesuits as well. That's pretty cool. The standard flight suit's obviously quite sort of, you know, basic, but yeah, like the Artemis suit, I do like a lot. Obviously, the scanner still needs to be sort of improved, but as in like the mini game scanner, the sort of genetic scanner. I mean that they didn't think that one through, did they? That's the thing. I mean, they said they're not going to have it in the full release game, which is cool. But you know, I just think they're going to get this kind of more simple. Is it just going to be, you know, or it'll do a little? I don't know how they're going to handle it. There's obviously people trying to work out what they're going to replace it with. Something more simple, obviously. Yeah, that's entirely possible, Derek. You know, it's Yeah, they may have actually just pushed it way down the priority list because there's lots of things going on. There's lots of new stuff they've been putting in. There's like a huge number of changes in this compared to Horizon. So as you say, it may not have just been much attention be put on it in the first place. It's an interesting idea there, Vantablack, about preparation for on-foot combat. People don't use them as a weapon. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I don't really know either way, to be honest. I mean, you could be right, but I don't know how they intend the SRV to be used. You say it could be used as like a mini tank, like a forward combat kind of base, and some people I think have been using it as that. But I've not really used it in a combat sense since during the alpha test, so I'm not really sure. You'd have to talk to someone who'd actually probably like done a multiple player combat thing where it's hacking a base and one of them is using an SRV. I think I've seen some footage of that, but I'm not really sure about exactly, because this is the interesting thing about obviously what Frontier intends and what the actual realities are sometimes different. It's just like any developer, the things don't always manifest in the way that you think they're going to. No, it's interesting, Raven. I haven't seen the Tetris interface for it. That does sound quite funny, actually. Oh, that sounds funner. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I think with a lot of gameplay stuff is you've got to sort of just break it down to its kind of core components and think that it's like, is this interesting? Is this fun? What's someone going to get out of this? And does it make sense in the context of the rest of the game? Because I think part of the issue with the sort of handheld scanner is like, what sense does that make in the rest of the game? It just seems to be just something that someone plucked from something else and just put there without really any thinking, any big picture thinking at all. That's interesting, Derek. So it is like a tank. I thought it might be used like that, or maybe an armored personnel carrier, or whatever you want to call some kind of armored vehicle. It's funny that it says it has trouble moving around the terrain because it's designed in a way, even the way it looks as well, with with its wheels and what have you, that it should move around the terrain really quite easily, but it doesn't. So it's sort of, I'm not quite sure what the idea is supposed to be with the new SRV. Well, it's not really the new SRV, it's the old SRV that's been kind of radically altered for some reason. I think that's what's confusing about it. It's not a new SRV, it's the same one, but it's not the same one because it's been so changed in its model. Because also in Frontier's own sort of press releases and streams and things, they've not really talked about the SRV almost at all, other than people asking, is there going to be new SRVs? Other than that, I don't recall it being mentioned at all. Yeah, Derek, you could be right. It might be intentional. About it being difficult to move over terrain. But you say it's like just trying to work out sort of what's going on and why. But so this thing with this whole alpha test, some things seem to be like, I can see what they were trying to do, but I'm not sure about this. But with the SRV, it's like, I'm not really even sure what they're trying to do, to be fair. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. It really is in this regard. But this is what's partly fun about these whole sort of alpha and beta tests, is that we get to try new stuff out, and at the same time we also get to make sort of speculation, sometimes informed, sometimes sometimes blind guesswork, depending on what it is. But it's fun to speculate as well and to try and work out based on the clues. It's like, what did they intend by this? It's like, is this what's going to happen? It's like, is this a bug? Always the question, Ellie, is this a bug or is this a feature? Someone should do a quiz, I think, with Elite. Is like have a round call, bug or feature. I'd like to see that. That would be fun. Oh, this is an interesting one, Vanta. A drone, like with NASA. I see you're talking about the Mars helicopter. I mean, yeah, it would be interesting to see if you could have a little drone on the surface of a planet as a sort of recon drone, maybe like a handheld drone that you launch. Because in real life, people have got those little handheld drones as well. Obviously, I think I've seen a few YouTubers use those. Especially like travel YouTubers, they go somewhere and they like show aerial shots of where they are. I think some news people do it now as well. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if something like that happened. But I see apparently there's surface tech apparently that's being held back for the full release in a few months of Odyssey, and there's according to Frontier, there's also further stages of Odyssey after that are going to come out. So not everything's coming all out at once. So it's going to be sort of phased, I think, as well as looking for a phased sort of implementation. So yeah, because I've seen some people who have been, so we say, have been slightly more disappointed with the alpha. Have been saying that I don't like this, and this, and saying that what is X, Y, and Z, or where don't we have X, Y, and Z? It's like, well, we don't know yet because we might have what you want, but it might take a few months to get there, or it's going to come at like some future phase of Odyssey in like 6 months to a year or something. I don't have the timetable in front of me because obviously I don't work for Frontier, but you know, it would be nice to find out. Oh, that's a fascinating idea, Derek. Grabbing bodies and moving them would be awesome. Do you mean like technology or rocks or both? It's an interesting point as well, Van. So yeah, absolutely. There is so much coming out in the universe at the moment. There's yeah, it's going to take a while to actually explore, even just the stuff that's in the alpha at the moment. You'd have to be like playing all the time, pretty much full time, to get through all the content and evaluate it properly. I mean, like I've been playing quite a bit recently, and I've only really done the exploration kind of stuff, properly. I've not really had the time yet to do the sort of first-person shooter stuff sort of properly yet. And a lot of people, vice versa. A lot of people have just not touched the exploration stuff yet, just done nothing but combat. But yeah, there's just lots of other things of this part of the release, and I don't know how much more Frontier are going to put out, but you say it's definitely going to be fun to find out. They haven't actually told us what the release date actually is. We know roughly because of the sort of business reports they had to give to the stock exchange, but only in terms of what quarter, not exactly what month or what the exact day of release is. They would have thought they should know pretty soon. Ooh, that's interesting. NPCs at settlement, the body has got discovered. Yeah, no, that is a very good one actually. Like to stop discovery, if you shoot somebody, then move their body and hide it somewhere, that delays you being discovered. So yeah. But as you say, there's certain elements of alpha or certain things that are not going to be the same as on release, or they're kind of bugged at the moment, or yeah, okay, feature or bug, or oversight even. I think there's certain bugs and issues in Horizons that have never actually been truly solved, but I think they were just waiting for a kind of code refresh on Odyssey for that to happen. I mean, we, especially as explorers, we always come back to the issue of instancing of groups, and obviously the same applies for racers, for PvP people, any kind of event people. this is all going to apply to, because Frontier have said that they're supposed to have improvements in instancing, but they've said that, to be fair, quite a few times before in Horizons, and Horizons never really improved that much in terms of its instancing. There were small improvements, I will admit, but nothing extensive. I mean, the whole peer-to-peer model is problematic. I mean, it's not really, doesn't lend itself to instancing any more than about 4 to 8 players, really. Anything more than that, and you're just kind of lucky, really, to have it these days. Oh yeah, that's a very good point, Derek. It's at the moment working for Frontier must be a 24/7 experience. It's always going to be the way around the time of a big test or a release. It's all hands to the pump, isn't it? All hands on deck. I wonder what the professional testers at Frontier do. I mean, I don't know how many they employ or what have you, and obviously they're probably going to get them testing more developed versions of the game than we have access to. Unless they're trying to replicate, obviously, a fault in the alpha, which the obviously testers do that as well. Yeah, these alpha and beta tests are always intriguing because there's always so many questions about the new content, where it's going, what the intentions were behind it, is it going to get fixed in time? These are all good questions and all completely natural ones. But yeah, I think I didn't actually watch the live stream that Frontier thing. I think it was yesterday. But I don't know if there's any particular news about when Phase 4 is going to come out. Is it going to be tomorrow or is it some other time? I haven't actually had time to catch up yet. I've just been preparing for the stream and whatnot. Well, I checked last night. There hadn't been any announcements yet, so we shall see. We shall see. All in good time. All in good time. What does intrigue me particularly is that Frontier, in terms of these new bits that haven't been actually put into the alpha but will be in the final release, some of them apparently do relate to exploration. And that does have me thinking. It's like, well, what do they mean by that? Because it could be a number of things. Even if it was like improved Thargoid bases and like just more of them, or maybe actual Thargoid planets. I mean, not necessarily like an Harmonia world or anything like that, Ammonia world with Thargoids on it, but like a low atmospheric pressure world like we've got now, but with like more Thargoids on it, or maybe an actual living Thargoid on the surface or something. All kinds of stuff like that. Or even just more Guardian stuff would be quite cool. Something we haven't really had that much of for a while is like alien civilizations, or the remains of alien civilizations. I think, to be fair, the last Frontier stream I watched all the way through was probably like the anniversary one from about 18 months ago, whenever it was. I have watched bits of other ones since, but I don't usually watch them from beginning to end. They can be good sometimes. I think a lot of the time it's just easier to actually get, you know, a YouTuber to summarize them and say, oh, this was the interesting thing on the stream and this was shown and blah blah blah. You know, I think that's people like, you know, Burr and Obsidian Ant tend to do very well. It's like this is the elite news and sort of quite kind of good summaries of what's been happening. Because obviously, even if you play Elite, you don't always have the time to keep up with everything that's been going on, especially at the moment when there's so much happening. It's more like a full-time job keeping up with it. Don't seem to have any low temperature diamonds. Shame. Apparently the CM teams are being expanded quite a bit right now and into the future, especially for Elite. Maybe they're intending just a lot more content or just a lot more workload generally, which is interesting. So obviously we've seen Sally return over recent weeks, which is positive. She is cool. Ah, the Phantom and Mamba. Yeah. Overheating crashed the Mamba on stream. Oh, you couldn't make it up, could you? It's like you would have thought they'd have like had a run through beforehand. Considering like you're doing this professionally, you know, guys. Unless they literally only had access to it like half an hour before or something. Oh my. Yeah. I think to be fair, I think a lot of people do watch streams. Not just generally, but certain people do watch streams to watch the streamer screw up in some way, and I understand that. It can be incredibly funny. It can be funny for the streamer as well, if they, as long as they've got a good sense of humour, you know. Because yeah, sometimes it's not easy to actually be like presenting something and actually flying at the same time. I mean, if you do it enough, obviously it becomes kind of second nature. But even then, if you've got new content, particularly, and you're not that used to it, yeah, I can kind of see how they might make a mistake like that. But yeah, it's kind of funny doing it on stream. Okay, low temperature diamond. Here we come. Ah, you did a combat stream of yourself, yeah. This is the thing about if you do anything on a stream, whether it works or it doesn't, it's all out there. No, absolutely, Derek. The CM people are good people, I think. Some of them have been more competent than others, but I think they're all good people. The present bunch, I don't think I know them as well. Because there was a period that was almost like a total clear out over a few months. Oh yeah, the present lot aren't bad, I will say that. Wonder how much it pays to be a CM. I don't expect it's probably that much, to be honest. I think most jobs in the games industry don't tend to be that well paid unless you happen to be, you know, like a certain sort of specialist or a producer. Yeah, no, absolutely. It is good to see their spirit out there. Talking about big things, I hear that LaveCon is going to be on again this year because also there was some doubt for a while whether it would actually happen or not, but apparently it is actually going ahead. I mean, not that I can go this year anyway, but it's one of the things I always wanted to do but never actually have had the opportunity to. It's usually been something on at the time, or I think a couple of times I have actually had the money, but it's been sold out. So it's been a bit unfortunate, really. I do wish Frontier would actually do another one of their Frontier Expos like they did in 2017. They've only ever done one of them, but it was really good, and they did themselves a huge favour, I think, for the community by putting themselves out there and having this, launch event for some of their other games, and obviously the most recent update of it, which I think at the time was Beyond, and that was their launch for that, and everyone was there. I mean, even Braben himself was there, so it was really quite cool. But at the time, I think people assumed they'd do more things like that, or at least an annual sort of, Frontier Expo or Con, or whatever you want to call it. But they never did. It was just a one-off, and it was a bit of a missed opportunity. I think it would be nice for that to happen, because they say it isn't purely about Elite, even though Elite is the biggest part of that expo. There was a lot of other sort of Frontier-related stuff going on. I think those kind of community events are in-person ones are really sort of great as well. I don't think I knew as many people in person at that time as I probably or in games which I do now. At the time, there was a few people I knew, obviously, but they were otherwise engaged, or I didn't get time to catch up with them or what have you. But yeah, well, this is the thing, isn't it? The pandemic has made any kind of live event very difficult. But I was talking more like in a broad sense, and like once we sort of get beyond this and stuff in the long run. I mean, LaveCon is only just happening, I think, just because the UK happens to have quite a good vaccination rate at the moment. But if it wasn't for that, then there'd be no chance at all it would happen. I think LaveCon's also a fairly small event, so yeah. But I mean, fingers crossed, there'll be a time when we return to some like vaguely normal kind of setup where this stuff does become possible again. I mean, who knows when exactly it'll be, but yeah, hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. Yeah, you're right. The Earth is in a state of outbreak. It absolutely is. That's the funny thing. Sometimes you see the things in game, but then you think of the real life parallels to it. You're thinking, outbreak system. Yeah, shipping pharmaceuticals across space. Like, yeah, interesting. Getting pharmaceutical analyzers and things like that. I think it was always one of those things that people, well, when I say people, I mean experts, um, virologists, and what's the word I'm looking for? People who study pandemics, but epidemiologists. That's it. Always said was sort of inevitable. Something like this was You know, especially just the history of the world. If you know the history of like Europe of the last 2,000 years, stuff like this was kind of bound to happen at some point, just because of the way that biology works. In some ways, it's probably better that it happened now than if it, like 20 years ago, it would have been a pain. Very primitive internet, less sophisticated medical technology. It would have been so much worse if this had happened 20 years ago. Still, let's not to worry too much and try and look to the bright side. I have been impressed with the time span that all these vaccines have been developed under. I know some of them have been developed from like an existing kind of basis of a vaccine, but it is fascinating. I mean, how much resource has been pushed towards it. It's a bit like almost like the Apollo program, but for biology. Isn't like you put enough manpower and resources into a particular project, you can get so much done so quickly. 5G Bill Gates, yeah. Now, of course, it's a joke, I mean, to put it this way, you don't get too many like science and debunking conspiracy theorists in Elite, because it's like it's about science and engineering. Well, kind of. Some of it's real, some of it's like science fiction, obviously. But you don't get too many like science conspiracy theorists. It'd be moon landing conspiracy theories or 5G ones, because most people I notice in Elite tend to look for evidence for things, and so therefore kind of they know a conspiracy theory when they see one. So yeah, when people say like that, I always assume that they're joking anyway, unless I later then realise that they're actually not. But yeah, it's always the way. Especially the Bill Gates bit I don't understand. It's like, why Bill Gates particularly? It's like he's the retired head of Microsoft. He's basically a software nerd who wanted to do some good for people by giving money to develop, vaccines and things. Like, he's about the least likely sort of, even of like the billionaire class in the world, he might be one of the least likely people to ever be like, a Bond villain. Because, I mean, he is what he appears to be. He's a software nerd who wanted to do some good for people. It's like, seriously? Yeah. I mean, even if you took like all the high-profile billionaires in the world, most of the other ones like tick more of the boxes for like a Bond villain and what have you. Only got one low temperature diamonds. I think the 5G conspiracy theory is it's not quite flat Earth, but it's getting quite close to it. One's so insane and so bad, thinking that how could you ever come up with that in the first place, apart from pure insanity, Because there's a spectrum. There's like flat Earth at one end is like you've got to literally be insane to think that's true. Just look around you, And at the other end of the spectrum, I'd call near reality conspiracy theories, and like they're not actually true, but they sound kind of vaguely plausible, or you can kind of see how someone psychologically might have got to that stage. Like a lot of 9/11 truthers are kind of that kind of people. They're not right, but you can kind of understand psychologically how they got to where they got. But like 5G is like, well, that's pretty bad, even for a conspiracy theory. It's like, okay, so if this supposedly caused the effects of the pandemic, in inverted commas, why is there like no correlation at all between like 5G towers and the areas they're in and the actual like hotspots of the pandemic? Like lots of places that have a lot of virus and no 5G. You couldn't make it up. Right, absolutely. Bill Gates would make a very bad Bond villain because he is quite boring. I'm glad that he's putting his money to good use, but he's not the most exciting man in the world. Yeah, definitely. Because sometimes you get like there's a lot of people who let's say like people with money should give a certain amount of it to charity, which I agree. I mean, like I think especially in like Victorian Britain, this was very well known that a lot of rich people, it was almost like morally considered an obligation. If you were wealthy, you should like do something for other people, whether that be like fund educational programs or build a swimming pool or some other kind of public sort of facility and what have you. And some people do that to now, but not as many maybe did in the past. But I was thinking, well, if I had a lot of money, I would try and help people and still be quite wealthy, and that's a good idea. But it's a strange conspiracy theory. It's like for people like Bill Gates, he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. If he doesn't give his money away, people will say that he's greedy and rich. But if he gives his money away to try and help people, then he's also bad somehow. I don't know. It doesn't come from a place of rationality, though. I'm pretty sure about that. Oh well. Oh, absolutely. I just imagine it. It would be like the worst Bond film imaginable. Catastrophic Colonel era, yeah. There was that weird thing in like the late 90s, early noughties where you had like quite a few US military projects were like run on like Win 98. It's like, really? Win 98 or 95? You're running it on that? Even for that era, it's like, why aren't you running it on NT or something? If you're really going to use a Microsoft product in that time, wouldn't you be using NT? Because it's kind of more stable and more difficult to hack, etc. It's like, who did that? But yeah, it's like you don't want like a Win 95 based like missile destroyer program crashing in the middle of contact with an enemy vessel. It's just not something that you want to happen. Just imagine it now. I think people have already made jokes about Elon Musk and being a sort of like a Bond villain in training, practically. He's definitely got the space part of it going for him. My asteroid scans have been completed, and they have revealed to me nothing of interest. Switch on night vision to make this a bit easier. Bill Gates and the BGS, eh? Yeah. Yeah, no, the vaccine conspiracy theories are just bad. Even by conspiracy theory standards, they're really, really bad. It's like those sad cases. I don't want to sort of to get too dark on anyone at the moment, but you no doubt probably heard some of these cases where people have been like told by doctors and nurses like you've got COVID, like but then they give them complete denial that they have. It's like no, what I really got? No, you got coronavirus. But it's like they just can't accept that it's a thing. It's like, but why? It's like you accept like the cold, the flu, the Black Death, tuberculosis are all diseases. Why can't you accept this is a disease? I mean, it's a kind of coronavirus. Coronavirus existed for a long time. I mean, the common cold is technically a coronavirus. It's not a very powerful coronavirus, and it won't kill you, sure, but it's still technically a coronavirus. Keep on flying. I think there's always been like advocated, especially with conspiracy theories, like critical thinking, or more sort of other things should sort of more sort of critical modes of thinking should be taught in schools more than they actually are, or some kind of systemic kind of thinking. Even the sciences that's kind of comes with the territory. But if you're not, then it's not always taught to people. And it depends which country you're talking about here. Obviously, I'm talking more about like the state of play in the US and the UK rather than anywhere else. But yeah, it's not good for society if a lot of people can't think critically or are very vulnerable to conspiracy theories. Yeah, it's kind of sad that denial. I see it through different countries in Europe as well. It's just it's very sad when I see it in any sort of sophisticated country. I mean, technologically sophisticated country. First world kind of country. Because you think, well, you've got a sophisticated industrial base. People can't surely fall for this kind of nonsense. It's like, I mean, I think the internet has definitely made it easier for conspiracy theories to spread in a way they probably didn't before. As in, like, there were like always crackpots and people who had odd ideas, and there didn't used to be that many of them. But I think these days it's a lot easier for like bad ideas, or very least sort of ideas with no evidence behind them, get spread around very easily. Because people online, other conspiracy theories, then find each other and they start reinforcing each other's ideas. And it's very sad, really. No, I don't. You're absolutely right. It is interesting that we do have all this information at our fingertips, but a lot of people just aren't interested, or don't know how to read it. I think the saddest part is when you find some people who, not they can't read it. They probably can, but they just don't want to. They're not interested. For whatever reason. Yeah. And it's like you get to the point where some people say things like, "Oh, I don't believe researchers," or "I don't trust researchers." I was thinking, I've often thought to people like that, if I sort of saw them face to face, it's like, okay, if that's the case, you don't believe in research, then hand over your phone, actually hand over your car, your house, everything to me, because all of that is, guess what, based upon research that somebody has done. They don't think it through, do they? I mean, even thinking about this for like a couple of minutes, you probably come to the conclusion that, yeah, maybe there's something in this, this science lark. I don't know. What's the documentary you're talking about there, Vanessa Black? I don't think I've heard of that one before. Yeah, it's hard to understand a lot of this. It really is. Yeah, I saw that bot earlier. It's like I would usually sort of get rid of them. They tend to turn up like usually at the beginning of my streams, not near the end of them. But yeah, I'll get rid of it in a second. Yeah, it's just like these bots are always very easy to identify, aren't they? Want to become famous? Well, I'm not going to become famous at the hands of a bot, am I? I don't think anyone's ever become famous because of a bot, unless they happen to be a criminal or something and they got arrested for it. Not famous in a good way. Hey, do you want to become bot famous? It's kind of what they're asking, really. What's interesting about this, 5G conspiracies for a second, is that there was actually like a 4G conspiracy before it, but it wasn't actually anywhere near as publicized. But it's very much the same thing as a case of, well, oh yeah, mobile phone towers are going to radiate people's bodies and it's going to destroy everyone's mind. And it's like, oh God. It's like, technology is not radically different other than like higher like data sort of packet transmission and things like that. I mean, it's still, you know, electromagnetic waves of a very similar part of the spectrum. It's not the part of the spectrum that's going to do you any damage. If it was, I mean, because you think about it as well. If you conspiracy theorists, you're thinking about all these rich people are doing this, but then they would also get irradiated too by the 5G towers. So why would they damage themselves? That wouldn't make any sense. I think, yes, the thing about also trying to link coronavirus and the towers, like, that's a bit of a stretch. Even for a conspiracy theorist, that is a big stretch. That's a good point, Raven. Saying conspiracy, different target. Interesting. So you actually you do that for a living? That you climb radio towers? Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's really sad people start to set fire to them and do other stupid things. I know it's happened in the Netherlands. I know it's happened in the UK as well. That people have tried to burn down 5G towers. One of the saddest things a friend of mine showed me the other day. He was like on Tinder swiping through as you do, and this woman had a dating profile that basically started talking about 5G conspiracy theories on a dating app. Even if you're a conspiracy theorist, why would you put that on a dating app? Obviously, she must have been completely mad. I don't have an explanation for any of that at all. Oh dear. You gotta laugh, you really do. Oh, 100%. That's a bigger red flag as you can imagine for somebody. So I'm like, I don't think you're really dating material, to be honest. I don't think we're getting along somehow. Convention for lunatics, possibly, but yeah. I think they say that there's a correlation, and I think research is going to prove this. There's a correlation between how much a society is cynical or even suspicious about its public institutions, not just politicians, but civil service and other, health service and other things, kind of public institutions, and how much of a conspiracy theorist sort of mentality people have. I think one of the examples they used was Egypt, where a place where most people are very suspicious of the government, and conspiracy theories are just rife about like most aspects of life. I think for a Western country, the US is very conspiratorial prone for that same reason. Okay, maybe not as cynical as the Egyptians, maybe just as a comparison, but it's there seem a lot more people who are paranoid about the government than there are in other countries. I mean, not that governments are saints, but you know what I mean. It's like stuff that you can prove, and because obviously, like governments do bad stuff sometimes, but It's always like a sense of like they don't like not everything that you hear is true, you know. No, it's an interesting point, Raven. Sometimes it is a knock-on effect that people start believing in one thing, they start believing in other things, and that also has been proven to be a true psychological effect where people start believing in one conspiracy, they're more prone to believing in other ones. And I must admit, of all the conspiracy theories out there, Flat Earth is at least amusing. It's kind of harmless. I mean, I was thinking like burning 5G towers down and like, you know, COVID denial are actually quite harmful, or anti-vax is quite harmful because it does actually damage people's lives, puts people in danger. No, you're right about cult leaders. It's probably a kind of similar mentality. You know, you convince people of a certain kind of worldview, and then you just keep feeding that worldview. Doctors who say things like that shouldn't be doctors. I mean, I can understand if you said, let's say, a particular vaccine has, you're worried it might have a particular side effect, and you can like cite a particular study that maybe says there's X a reaction. Now that's okay to debate stuff based upon like actual evidence, but if you get actual doctors or nurses being anti-vax, like there shouldn't really be doctors or nurses if they're that, you know. Actually, one of the funniest things I can remember talking about conspiracy theories, this is very rare in Elite, as you no doubt all have noticed. I only met one moon landing denier in my time in Elite. This was, I think this was about, it's on the, actually, ironically, on the Apollo 11 expedition. Some guy, I don't know if he was trying to wind everyone up or maybe he was, but he started talking about moon landing conspiracy theories, and like someone just said like, you do realize that this is like probably the worst possible place for your theories, and like nobody here is going to pay any attention or take what you say seriously. I assume he must have been trying to wind people up, because why would you do that otherwise, you know? Having said that, people some people get very contrary and, you know, do things that are just completely opposite of common sense just because they can. It's like going into like a medical conference with doctors and epidemiologists and things, and just shouting loads kind of like anti-vax things at people. It'd be like, why would you do that? It'd be like the worst place imaginable for your theories, because no one's going to believe them. Are you Raven? Are you talking about that British doctor, Andrew, what's his name, who ended up starting a lot of this anti-vax nonsense? Oh, interesting. No, I don't think I've seen that Toast episode. No, but yeah, it is. It's very strange uh, about conspiracies like that. It's yeah, it's all very hard to understand. It really is. Having said that, there's some very weird politics going on at the moment about the AstraZeneca vaccine and a couple of the other vaccines as well. I was thinking that, well, yeah, some of them they have side effects, but then like, don't all drugs have side effects? And this one has quite low side effects. Obviously not perfect, but no drugs ever are. Just like, well, So why isn't it being used then? All this effort to try and produce a vaccine and you won't use it. It's like, well, it's very strange. Yeah, I've heard of some people actually in the Netherlands who are going to have an AstraZeneca vaccine, and they were basically about to get it, and they got told no. It was like we have to suspend the use of it. It's the authorities have told us we have to stop for now, and it's like, well, it's unnecessary, really. I understand if there was like a severe reaction, and a lot of people were getting it, then fair enough. But this was like a 1 in a million thing. And this is more to not medical regulators per se, but more from a political angle, I think. By the sounds of it, not really a conspiracy theory per se, but I think with the moon landing denials, it did accelerate. You know, when the film Capricorn 1 came out, and that was obviously a film about people faking a trip to Mars in a film studio. But the thing of the conspiracy theory, it does all become about belief systems, because I've obviously had conversations with moon landing deniers and tried to painfully explain to them what they're saying doesn't make any sense, and how that if you're gonna go, if you launch a Saturn V into orbit, which these people weren't denying that happened, but that's the most energy that you need to get from yourself of all the entire program. The spacecraft needs more energy to get from the surface of the Earth into Earth orbit than any other stage of the flight. So if you can get that mass from the Earth's surface to orbit, which these people admit has happened, doing the rest of it is relatively straightforward in terms of the energy you're using. So you've just admitted the hardest bit is true. Plus, you can't secretly launch a Saturn V anyway. So it's like, if you admit Earth orbit's a thing, then taking the step to actually land someone on the moon is not that tricky a leap of the imagination. Asteroid is crashing into my spacecraft. I will have to back off. Oh yay. Well, this is the thing about also the Russians being, one of the main proofs that it was a thing. I mean, they had their own moon program at the same time. They congratulated America on doing it. And plus, to be fair, it's like even America's allies would have said something if there had been, if it hadn't been true. I mean, do you really think the French government wouldn't have said something? Maybe an ally of America, but they certainly do what the hell they want, when they want. I mean, it's kind of a bit of a giveaway that the first living creatures to ever see the moon were actually turtles and flies from Russia in an unmanned Soyuz. So it's like, yeah, living things can go to the moon. They definitely can. The Russians did it before the Americans did. They just didn't send a person. No, absolutely, Raven. Those reflectors are still working to this day. But you say there's so much evidence as well. I mean, one of the best bits of evidence, funnily enough, apart from like all the material evidence, is the astronauts themselves, because all of them suffer signs of being irradiated. The Van Allen belts aren't problematic enough to stop someone from travelling through them, but you wouldn't want to hang around inside them. So all of them that pass through the Van Allen belts have shown signs of early what's the word I'm looking for? You have the eye malfunction. What's it called again? When you have like the lens kind of goes milky, and it's like cataract. That's it. They had early stage. All the people who went through the Van Allen belts on Apollo had early stage cataracts. Every single one of them, and that's usually a sign of being irradiated at some point in your life. So the astronauts' bodies are as good a medical witness as you could possibly hope for. 'Cause that's always one of the big conspiracy theorist things about we didn't go to the moon because the Van Allen belts are so powerful you could never live through it. Well, you don't hang around in the belt. You just fly through as quickly as you can at the weakest point of the belt, which is exactly what they did. And they still got irradiated anyway. Also, the another physical side effect of their journey through the Van Allen belts is the all the Apollo astronauts have a lot higher incidence of heart disease and heart damage than is normal for their kind of people, test pilots, or even the average population of the US. So yeah, that's another good bit that not many people mention. Unsurprisingly, the conspiracy theorists never know this because they don't like facts. I've got low temperature diamonds. Yeah, I expended nearly 220 tons of limpets, and I've got a measly 47 tons of low temperature diamonds. I'm going to now sell these at market if I can find somewhere cool to sell them. Yeah, there's so much evidence about that Apollo did go to the moon. It would have been easier and cheaper to have actually, even if you wanted to fake it, it's easier and cheaper to go to the moon and do it than to fake it. Because as I say, Saturn V is the ultimate proof in itself, really, because that's the most expensive part of it. That cost the most money per unit, and out of the whole program to develop was the Saturn V. And even the biggest deniers never deny the Saturn V existed. So if that exists, and that's the most problematic element of it, then the rest of it is, it's not child's play, but it's like, it's so much easier. So their arguments are sort of self-defeating. But then again, that's conspiracy theorist mindset. It's like no matter what you show them, what evidence you show them, they're usually still in denial. Once in a while you meet someone who is actually kind of, convinced by, scientific argument or evidence. But it's not common, I mean, that's the only reason I ever debate anyone about the moon landings, if I can be bothered, is because I think I might be able to convince them that, they're wrong. And that it's like, I'm not trying to do you down as a person. I think you've made a mistake, and I think, you've got some very odd ideas, but I'm, so much more fun to think that we actually did go to the moon as well. You've also got all those satellites recently from like India, Japan, Russia, China, European Space Agency. So many of them have all photographed the Apollo landing sites. They're all there. They're all exactly the same patterns, in the moon, the lunar dust left by the footprints and by the rover that NASA showed. They're all exactly the same. There is no real doubt that this happened. But even if it was true, what does it prove? It's like, why are they trying to shoot down possibly the greatest achievement in human history? It's like, why would you do that? I think a lot of people, and they have a conspiracy theorist mindset, it's a case of they want to act as if they know something that you don't. They have greater insight than you do into the universe somehow, but they don't. It's really quite sad, actually. I mean, most of them are harmless. Obviously, it's the anti-vax ones I worry about because of the real-world implications of it, but yeah. No, you're right, Raven. It is usually a losing battle. I mean, I think I sometimes just choose the person to see if I think it's worthwhile or not. Because some people, it will be a losing battle, and you can tell from the word go. I think it depends what the conspiracy theory is. Well, if it's like the moon landing, I'm more likely to speak out just because I'm kind of passionate about that subject and know a lot about it. Yeah, usually have to. I think sometimes I could probably convince the, so we said, the milder moon landing deniers, just because I know a lot. and some of them are kind of more convinced by that. Things like anti-vax is very hard to argue with, though, because they often kind of so blinkered, they're so narrow-minded that they've got this very, it's almost like a religion, they've got this very fixed idea of what they think the truth is, and nothing can contradict it. And it's really sad. It really is. No, that's right, Derek. I think that's not almost certainly true. There's something that's gone wrong somewhere. And yes, a lot of the time, conspiracy theories they aren't bad people. They aren't malicious people. They just, you say, people who have had some kind of problem in their life, and somehow it's comforting to think that to them that the universe is sort of like more ordered and more structured than it really is. That there isn't a lot of sort of randomness and unpredictability to it. That there is somehow order, even when there isn't really that much order at all. I think for a lot of some people in conspiracy theories, it's a lot more of a scary thought that the universe is this big, complex, largely unpredictable thing. Okay, there are things you can predict, you know what I mean, but like over the long term, though, it's kind of, there's a lot more uncertainty out there than they're willing to admit to, and it scares them. I think that's a lot of it as well. It's their sense of they can't cope with the uncertainty that everyone else kind of lives with, really. I think at the moment, obviously, anti-vax is quite a big thing in the news because, pandemic and stuff. But yeah, it's a shame if it was just they would just have their own thoughts and that was it. I wouldn't really be that worried. But it's the fact that it has real world influence and it could kill people. Still, I don't want to be negative or too down on this, but yeah, it's unfortunate, really. Even though I'm debating, like, moon landing denied, it's sort of a bit more sort of upbeat because I'm trying to defend something that I think is cool and happy and like shows you what people can do, really, like the achievements of humankind, not the sort of paranoia of humankind. Yeah, let me see. I'm trying to find somewhere to sell my goodies. Let me see. Low temperature diamonds. Where's the best place I can sell right now? Able Gateway, maybe. Buckland Hub. Interesting. I'll go to Sagan Dock. That looks quite cool. 40 Leonis Minoris. I'll travel there. Should yield me a good amount of money. Show how many systems actually are in the bubble. That I've not actually been to every system in the bubble yet. Literally thousands of systems, though, isn't there? Okay, it's probably about 20 jumps, I reckon. 25, that's fine. That's cool, no worries at all. I'll just do what I need to do. And here we go, yay. Yeah, as a mining run, that was not the most efficient I've ever seen. That was actually pretty bad. Usually if I can get about 200 tons of limpets, I can probably get, I don't know, at least 100 tons of material out of it. Well, minimum of like 70, but this is like 47. It's like, that's one of the lowest amounts I've ever got from like a proper mining little trip. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame really, but it's just one of those things. It's down to RNG. Or as the Amex refers to him, RN Jesus. That's quite a popular one though, isn't it? RN Jesus. All those memes of it a few years ago. Hull breach attack? From what? Just overheating a bit. It's not that bad. And hello to anyone who's just joined us in the stream. And Commander Yannick, and this is messing around with mining. To be fair, the mining part of it is kind of ended. I'm on my way back to Sal at the moment. But yeah, it was fun. It lasted. I rarely say that about mining, but that was actually alright. As I say, I always tend to recommend almost anything in Elite is probably better when you're in a group of people. If you can mine other people, it's absolutely great. You can get things done so much quicker, and also the camaraderie of doing it with other people. But that's the thing with Elite Dangerous. It's so much better as a multiplayer game. It's great as a single player game, but it's one of the best multiplayer games out there. Definitely the best one I've ever played, anyway. Yeah, I'm flying a cutter at the moment. It's probably the best mining ship out there. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Though you're actually going to mining missions from stations. I've rarely done those. I've done those a couple of times when it was just like really seriously good money and it was hard to ignore. I think in Colonia those are quite good if you can get them. In the bubble I've not really bothered. Yeah, that's funny, is it? You say like you can get like millions for a tiny amount of relatively easy to obtain material. Slightly surprising, but if they want to pay, fair enough. Having said that, one of the funniest things I've ever seen in terms of like getting transport missions or have you, this was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. In Elite, this is like after Horizons had dropped though, that there used to be these missions from like Sothis and Robigo to the bubble that used to literally transport human waste, bio waste, and it's like, so what you're telling me is that you're paying me literally like 20 million to transport literally tons of human excrement like 100 light years across space to the bubble, and people are attacking me for this, trying to steal it from me. Is this a realistic scenario? Probably not, but you're paying me a lot of money to do it, and these missions are kind of amusing because of the attacks and what have you, and trying to stay out of them, and it was kind of hilarious. Insanity Revenge of the Flying Poo, absolutely, yeah. But yeah, it's that was definitely the oddest sort of missions, and like literally money for pretty much nothing, you know, for waste. Oh dear. Gotta laugh at things like that. I think the poo missions dried up pretty quickly, but yeah, it was good earner for a while. So I think some of the passenger missions can be quite fun as well. You know, when you get irate passengers who just like start asking for all kinds of random nonsense. So like you want 2 tons of clothes on a trip to a tourist beacon where you're not going to be meeting another person at all. That makes sense. Yes. Okay, you want a ton of diamonds. A ton of diamonds? Really? Okay. To be fair, most of those transport missions, sorry, passenger missions, where they start demanding stuff, I tend to just ignore them. Unless it's a really, really long, mission and I can't really ignore them. But a good thing about a lot of the sort of Rubigo, Sophis kind of cluster missions is that you can ignore them. Even if they want something, it's usually such a short flight that you don't have to bother with that. But as been pointed out before, I would recommend that's a good way of getting money is definitely doing passenger missions from the sort of Rubigo, Sothis area. The Sirius Atmospherics ones, definitely. It's a very hot ship, this, unnecessarily so. Now again, to be fair, this is not exactly rigged for cool running. It's rigged to be as efficient as I can for mining. Yeah, this Elite can be unintentionally very funny at times. I do like some of the references from time to time, also from like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's always a good one. Okay, I think I'll probably be winding up the stream the next 5 minutes or so. Been going for about 3 hours now. So that's all good. But yeah, I will be streaming this sort of slot most days, usually Monday to Friday. Most of the time I'll be doing Elite still. Probably say varying it between doing Odyssey and doing Horizons. Because the thing is, doing Odyssey all the time it's a bit weird because you're kind of limited at the moment. Obviously when we get like more ships and stuff, it will be cool. But at the moment, yeah, it is a little bit sort of limiting in a way. Good to see it. But yeah, what I do at the core of this is sort of Elite streaming, shock horror, you know. It's what I play the most of generally. I do play other games outside of Elite, but not as much. So unsurprisingly, this is the core game that I'm doing. Right, I think it's probably best I sort of wrap it up there. But thank you for everyone who's been on the stream today. Thank you everyone particularly who's made comments in chat. It's always great to see you guys, and some very good topics, some amazingly sort of broad topics we've been talking about as well. It's always great to see that. It's one of the best things about the Elite community. We always have wonderful conversations, and I thank you all for it. And I hope to see you all soon in this stream or in game or future events. But either way, fly safe or fly dangerous. Whatever you do, have fun. Oh, Eric Johnson, before I go, you asking which games? Yeah, I also do, not necessarily always for streaming, but I've done like the Tenants on a stream, and I might do Crusader Kings in the near future, and possibly some older versions of Quake I'm thinking of doing. But 100% sure about those, yeah. But thanks everything, and I will see you all soon. And have a good one. Fly safe.